Okay. Okay, we should be live. I've been trying to tweak my green screen, and for some reason, because I remember when I'm doing paint, it's either paint looks fine on the green screen, or the browser looks messed up. So if I switch over to the browser, this is a weird way to start the weekly live stream, but like if I do this, for instance, see, it brings up, there's like a weird static behind me, which I don't understand why. I've been trying to tweak the color, but the more I do that, it's going to make me look more transparent. Well, I don't know. I got to figure out, I have to look up this more. But anyway, the point is, when I do paint, it looks okay. When I don't do paint, and there's a dark background, there's a problem. So anyway. So good evening, everybody. That's something that I have to look into. But anyway, good evening, everybody. This is going to be This Week in Tech, the first episode for February. We are streaming this live on February 1st, if you're tuning in for the weekly live stream show. So a couple of things that we're going to talk about in the news here for the tech news. I'm just going to type them out. So RTX 4080. See, this is why I need to get the Windows 10 Paint again. RTX, yeah, see, like, why does it do that? It's like RTX 4080, yeah, that's really annoying. RTX 4080 Super reviews. That's going to be topic number 1. Hey, RK. Hey, Lipe. Good evening. That's going to be number 1. Then we're also going to talk about Zen 5. AKA Ryzen 9000. I am assuming it's going to be called Ryzen 9000. We can also talk about the Ryzen 8700G and 8600G. Those also, I think, launched this week, if I'm not mistaken, although nobody reviewed them, or there was like one review from Wendell. So I don't know what the deal is with that. I guess it's kind of overshadowed by the 4080 Super reviews. And then we're going to talk about Sony's PlayStation. I like how it auto-corrected me. I did not know that Paint has auto-correct. It actually re-spelled PlayStation with a capital S. PlayStation State of Play. And then we're also going to talk about what was the other thing I want to talk about? I guess Zen 5. Maybe that's it. Something about NVIDIA, but I can't remember what I was going to say about NVIDIA. We might talk about it when we talk about the 4080 Super reviews. Maybe 50 series, but I don't know. A lot of weird stuff in the news surrounding NVIDIA. The whole thing with the China situation. That there's more news about that, but I think at this point, people are probably tired of hearing about that, so I might not even discuss that. So we'll see here, if time permits. So these are the main things that I have planned for this this episode. And as always, if you're new to the channel and you like PC DIY topics, all things regarding, building a PC, for instance, motherboards, CPUs, GPUs, etc., RAM, and you have a question on any of these things, feel free to ask a question in the chat, and either I will answer it live, or if I'm answering a previous question, I'll try to get to it during the stream, and if not, then other people that are familiar with the channel's content could also chime in the chat, so we can all have a good discussion. So anyway, with that being said, let's go ahead and get on into the first topic here. It's going to be the RTX 4080 Super review. So there's, I guess, without getting too far into it, this card, out of all 3 of the Super series, there's a reason why this card launched last. Because when you remember how NVIDIA typically launches their graphics cards, and this is not only NVIDIA that does this. AMD will launch their flagship first as well. NVIDIA typically leads with the most powerful in the lineup first. So when it comes to these super cards, typically the 4080 Super is the most powerful one, so that should be the first one to launch, followed by the second strongest one, which would be the 4070 Ti Super, and then the third one would be the 4070 Super. But in this case, they did it in the complete opposite order, and the reason why they did that, based off of all the review data that I've kind of read through and watched several review videos, the conclusion that I came to was that as you go from the 4070 Super to the 4070 Ti Super to the 4080 Super, as you go essentially up the stack, the value proposition actually gets worse. So it's almost like it's the complete opposite of what everybody thought was supposed to happen. So let me put it in another way. The 4070 Super did really well. That one is probably arguably the best one out of the three because it is quite a noticeable bit faster than the original 4070. It now can tie or even exceed the 7800 XT in a lot of things. Now, it's obviously better in ray tracing, but we already knew that. It doesn't change the VRAM. It's still 12 gigs of VRAM. But it keeps the same price point as the original 4070. So therefore, I think overall, the 4070 Super succeeded. It's a success. It passed the test. Now you go up the stack. Now 4070 Ti Super. I always have to remember how to say that. You always say Super last. That's how you remember. So 4070 Ti Super. That one at first, I think before any of the reviews came out for any of these GPUs, I think a lot of people were expecting the 4070 Ti Super to be the best value out of the three, but it actually kind of was a little bit underwhelming. It had more RAM, which was probably its major improvement over the previous one, and it kept the same price point. But it wasn't really that much faster in the end of it. So it's like, depending on how you look at it, it's like, yeah, it's probably overall the best high-end card from NVIDIA, 16 gigabytes. It's what, $800 MSRP. But the problem is NVIDIA did not release a Founders Edition reference card for the Ti Super. So therefore, it's up to the market to determine what the actual price will be. And hence all your Asus Strix and all these other cards will come out and they'll raise the floor, the price floor for this card. And that's why it's kind of lackluster at the end of the day. The 4070 Super is the only card that made a decent jump. Yeah, Taekwondo, I would agree with that statement. And people can almost afford the 4070 Super. Yeah, and that, because if you think about it, that one does seem like it is the most, the one that makes the most sense. Let's go to that one. Well, let's look at, let's pull up a review for, Zotac is really good because this one's actually MSRP, so we'll do the Zotac one. That's why I like to do that one. And then all for the Ti, and then for the Super, we can look at the reference. So, yeah, if we look at the reference review for the 4070 Super and we look at the conclusion. Okay, by the way, one thing about this card that I do want to point out for those that are thinking of getting the 4070 Super, specifically the NVIDIA version of the card. This card is hot garbage because the GeForce RTX logo doesn't light up. Just FYI, I'm warning you guys, if you're thinking of getting this, don't get it. Go and get an AIB card because this card, unless you don't care about the GeForce RTX logo illuminating, yes, it's very superficial and it's subjective, but for someone like me, I feel that if I'm paying $600 for a graphics card, the logo at the very least should light up. If the logo, if they're gonna penny pinch me that much for $600 and not illuminate the GeForce RTX logo, then yeah, I can take my money elsewhere and go buy a different card. So just kind of a public service announcement, don't buy the reference 4070 Super because it is very bland when it doesn't have any lights. So if we just look at the value in conclusion, right? It's still going to have all the kind of the negative things, like it's 12 gigs, relatively weaker cooler, but like I just said, don't buy the Founders Edition. Noise levels a tad bit high. Don't buy the Founders Edition if you don't want to deal with the noise. No DisplayPort 2.0. That is a limitation of this generation. Only the AMD cards have this, which doesn't really matter too much for gaming, but it does matter if you want the latest and greatest display technology that actually can give you tangible benefits for having DisplayPort 2.0. So those are the kind of things that still stand out. But if you look at the positives, it still has a lot of positives, although some of these are questionable because they're literally just the same thing that the 4070 had. For example, the AV1 encoder, nobody cares because all the 40 series have that anyway. Support for HDMI 2.1, again, that's just a carryover from the other ones. So 16-pin, this is actually a negative aspect of this card because this card is supposedly so energy efficient. If it's so energy efficient, why do I need the controversial 16-pin fire hazard, whatever you want to call it, on this graphics card? I really would have preferred if they would have just stuck an 8-pin on here, or an 8-pin plus 6-pin or whatever. You know, like, why did they put this on here? This is stupid. So that to me is a negative. So just saying. DLSS 3, of course, same as all the other 40 series. Fantastic energy efficiency. Okay, fantastic energy efficiency, yes. 16-pin power connector, no. Beats 7800 XT conclusively, yeah, it does. And that's the reason why this card is a total, it's a success. Let's just call it as it is. The 4070 Super is a success. Out of the three of them, this one, I guess, punched the most above its weight, and it actually succeeded. The other two, in my mind, actually kind of fell short, and we're going to talk about those in a minute. The 4070 Super is just 4070 Ti with a lower price power limit, and that will cost you multiple FPS. What? The 4070 Ti Super is a letdown due to not having 64 mega. Yeah, so there's a lot of other technical reasons why the 4070 Ti Super is kind of a dud. But overall, I have a feeling that a lot of people are still going to buy it, regardless of what we're saying here. Because, so, this audience is what I would consider above average, well above average in some cases, than the standard consumer who will go out and buy a graphics card just so they can play Call of Duty. That is the unfortunate reality, but, you know, people are going to go and buy the Ti regardless of how little of L2 cache is on it. Looks are important to some. Zotac ain't bad, but all the models I have sent out to customers have had noisy fans. Really? Because the thing that makes it noisy is the power consumption, also the default fan profile. But let's look at the Zotac. So the reason why I would look at this one is because this one is actually MSRP. The Zotac Trinity is $799. The rest of them have things like ASUS Strix tax and a bunch of other things. And it's like, if they're going to go ahead and do that, if ASUS is going to charge $1,100 or $1,049 or whatever it is for a 4070 Ti Super, why would I buy that when I could just get a 4080 Super? You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of stupidity in my mind alongside the 4070 Ti Super because there's no reference card. So it's like, yeah, you can claim it's $800 MSRP, but if nvidia doesn't anchor that, everyone else is just going to run away with it. And that's why you see, you know, Strix cards that are X number of dollars and MSI, Supreme, whatever, at Y number of dollars. So it lacks consistent pricing compared to the other two. And that's probably the biggest problem, ultimately, that I think kind of hurts the 4070 Ti Super. Because it does have some good improvements over the original. Namely, the fact that it has 16 gigabytes. I don't know who would be comfortable unless they're just, they don't care. They don't actually know what hardware specs mean. But I don't know who would feel comfortable spending, $800+ on a 12 gigabyte graphics card in 2024. But this card, the Ti Super, fixes that criticism. Because that was a thorn in nvidia's side pretty much for all of last year. From what I have seen with the Super refresh, the 4000 series GPUs, the 4000 series GPUs is the GPU architecture doesn't scale with CUDA, but it seems the more L2. Well, that can be said of a lot of modern architectures, though. I think AMD kind of figured that out with the RDNA 2 and X3D on the CPU front. But yeah, like if you put cache in close proximity to where workloads get done or scheduled onto, then yeah, you're going to run into a performance increase. That's kind of how it works, right? But yeah, I agree with you. Like that, it doesn't seem like it scales laterally. It seems like it scales in I don't know what the right word is, logarithmically. I guess it's a logarithmic scale as opposed to a linear scale. In terms of CUDA count. But yeah, like this one's actual $800. So that's why I would look at this one. I guess there's also like a PNY that could also be had for the same amount of money. But the pros of this one and the cons are for the Ti Super, sold at MSRP. Well, this specific one is sold at MSRP. 16 gigs. Like I said, that fixes that serious criticism. Fantastic energy efficiency. DLSS 3, ray tracing improved, although I don't think it was really that improved over the original. Quiet, good temperatures, idle fan stop. None of this stuff matters, like, because all the cards do this. Like, idle fan stop and backplate, really? Like, I would hope that this is standard equipment on an $800 part, like, it's like if we're speccing out a car, I would hope if I'm paying for that tier, like it would include air conditioning. Just saying. Support for HDMI 2.1. Again, like, this is not really whatever. AV1, same thing. And then okay, on this card, this sort of makes sense, but I would still consider the fact that I think this only needs 2 8-pins to run. See, in my mind, the only way you can justify the 16-pin, aka the 12+4 very high power connector, the controversial, it's going to burn your house down connector. The only way you can justify putting that on your GPU is if you would otherwise have to use 3 8-pin connectors. If your graphics card doesn't need 3 8-pin connectors, you don't need this adapter, or you should not have to be forced into using this adapter. So I don't consider this a pro. This is like a con. This is like a negative thing. Like if I'm reviewing this GPU, if I'm reviewing the 4070 Super and the 4070 Ti Super, I will ding them both on including forcing the end user to use the 16-pin power. Because you have to require 3 8-pins for you to justify using this. If your card only needs 2 8-pins, it can use 2 8-pins. It doesn't need this. This is dumb. This is dumb. So that's bad. Bad news. Okay. 16 gigabyte rarely makes a difference. I don't know why. Okay, this is dumb. This is stupid. Why is this considered a bad thing in the review? Like, literally, okay, this is not me complaining about the actual graphics card. This is me complaining about whoever reviewed this. Like, I think it was... okay, Wizard did this. Okay, Wizard, why did you say 16 gigabytes is a positive feature and 16 gigabytes rarely makes a difference is a negative feature? This shouldn't even be on here. This is like nitpicking at worst, or claiming that it should have had more at best? I don't know. I don't know why that's there. No DisplayPort 2.0, yeah, whatever. So, yeah, that's bizarre. Anyway, so this one... if you can get one at $800, I think this one is still kind of good value, but not as good value as the 4070 Super, if that makes sense. So it's like, as we go up the Super stack, the benefits, the value for money actually seems to go down. That's what I'm noticing. So that leads us to today's card. Whoops, that's not it. Where is it? This one. So the 4080 Super. That leads us to the final level, the final boss. So here we go. The RTX 4080 Super. The title of the review literally says helping you save $200. That right there kind of sets the tone on how this review is going to go. Because realistically, if you compare the 4080 to the 4080 Super, the difference is so insignificant. We're talking like 2%. Best case, 3%. Worst case, less than 1%. In some cases, I saw some reviews. Like I watched Paul from Paul's Hardware, his review. He saw performance regressions. His 4080 actually consistently boosted higher than his 4080 Super. So he had a lot of games where he was showing bar charts where his older 4080 was outperforming the 4080 Super review sample that he had. So that right there is one of the reasons why it's like, there's a reason why nvidia is actually pricing this thing lower for once in their life. For once in their life, nvidia is actually discounting a product compared to how it was last time. It's very, very rare that you'll ever see nvidia do that. Take note of that. Let that be kind of a educational lesson on nvidia's business practices. I'm not saying that it's bad. I'm not saying that it's good. But there's a reason why they cut the price by $200. And anybody who has a 4080 who paid anywhere from $1,200 to $1,400 plus when they bought it last year, depending on which model they have, please do not upgrade to this, or don't like side grade to this. Don't do it. Trust me, don't do it. This card actually has worse VRMs than the original Founders Edition. If we're talking about Founders Edition 4080 Super versus Founders Edition 4080 Original, the Super is missing some of the power phases. They actually cheaped out, and this review goes over that. They actually kind of cheaped out on it. They did cost-cutting measures on the Super, specifically the nvidia one. I don't know about the AIB ones, but the nvidia Founders Edition, they skimped on the quality, and that further can, I guess, in nvidia's mind, justify reducing the price by $200. So less power phases. The VRM on here is not as robust as the original. Now that may not matter because this card only uses like, I think 320 to 350 watts, which is not exactly a low amount of power. I wouldn't consider 350 watts to be energy efficient, like try playing Battlefield or Call of Duty at 4K with an uncapped frame limit for like 4 hours, and let me know how hot your room gets, like in the summertime especially. So I wouldn't consider 350 watts energy efficient. So this definitely does warrant the 12+4 power connector, because this would be like a triple 8-pin if it wasn't that way. So yeah, but this card, it's pretty much the same. It's virtually the same as the original 4080. Like if you were doing a side-by-side comparison, if on one screen you saw the 4080 rendering a game, on the next screen next to it you had the 4080 Super, you would be hard-pressed to tell the difference in a blind test without any frame rate counter on the screen. Like, that's how close it is. So it's almost negligible. So at the end of the day, that's why it says helping you save $200, because you're basically getting a 4080 that starts at a lower MSRP. Now, it does have more CUDA cores. It has slightly more CUDA cores than the original. I think the original one had like 9,700 something, if I remember. and this one is like 10,240 or whatever that one, or whatever the full amount is. So technically, the 4080 Super, in my mind, I hate the Super name, because if I was in the marketing department at NVIDIA, I would have called this the 4080 Ti. This should be the 4080 Ti, because this is the fully unlocked 8103 die. So as far as I'm concerned, this is the 4080 Ti. So don't be surprised if in the future you hear me referring to something as 4080 Ti, because if I'm saying 4080 Ti, that in my mind is synonymous with me saying 4080 Super. So this is basically a 4080 Ti, just like the 3080 Ti before it. In fact, if we look at the, let's go to this, and then let's go to the 3080 Ti. So the 4080 Super has 10,240 CUDA cores, 320 TMUs, 112 ROPs. So remember these three numbers. Now, 3080 Ti, 10,240 cores, 320 TMUs, 112 ROPs. Now do you see why I refer to the 4080 Super as the 4080 Ti? Same core count, same TMU count, same ROP count. This is a 4080 Ti as far as I'm concerned. Yes, it's a different die. Yes, it has more memory, but shouldn't the next generation have more memory? And yes, it has a smaller bus width. It's 256 versus 384. We're comparing a 103 to a 102, but who cares? Because they do this all the time. The GTX 1080 was a 104. A 1080 was a 104. Remember that, which is supposed to be like a 70 class product. So, it doesn't really matter as far as I'm concerned. So the 4080 Super is nothing more than a 4080 Ti flying under the radar, trying to like sneak out in the market without carrying the Ti branding, which I don't understand why, because I really think, in my mind, psychologically speaking, in the minds of consumers, I feel like the average consumer who buys NVIDIA's products holds the name Ti or Ti to a higher esteem. That to the average NVIDIA consumer holds higher prestige than the Super. So I totally would have called this the 4080 Ti. I feel like if they called this 4080 Ti, that would drive sales of this a lot stronger than calling it the Super. So this in my mind is a 4080 Ti. Remember, guys, last year when I talked about, remember how I theorized that NVIDIA could launch a 4080 Ti and a 4090 Ti? Remember what I said at the time? I said that if NVIDIA wanted to, just like how Superman said, this is going to be a really weird reference. This is a really weird movie reference that I'm about to make, but bear with me here. Just like Superman in Superman versus Batman, in that movie, Superman 2, where he, Batman tried to run him over with the Batmobile, and it literally, rammed into Superman. He basically was like he was in a car crash, and Superman was just standing there. And Superman, tore open the roof of the Batmobile, picked him up by the neck, and was like, if I wanted you dead, if I willed it, it would happen. He said something akin to that. Basically, if NVIDIA wanted back a year ago, I said, if NVIDIA wanted the 4090 Ti to exist, they could will it into the market. They could will it into existence on a whim. They could make it happen because it already exists. But they're not going to bring it to the consumer market, to the gamers market. Why? Because NVIDIA considers, and this is going to sound a little derogatory, but bear with me again, NVIDIA considers the gamer crowd as the peasant crowd. Yes, you heard that right. 4090 buyers are considered peasant class in NVIDIA's mind. If you are not in the AI bandwagon, or if you're not a crypto startup company, you are considered peasant class to them. Because if you can't afford, if you can't regularly afford multiple $2,000 plus GPUs, or I guess in this case $7,000 GPUs, if we're talking about the 4090 Ti's true identity, then you're considered peasant class. So, and they reserve the 4090 Ti for the elite class, for the AI startups, for the professionals, for the enterprise, for the big businesses, for the corporations. That is who gets access to the true 4090 Ti. And that is the reality that we live in. So don't forget that. Now, that is the status of the 4090 Ti. I've talked about it. I've shown it. Tech PowerUp even shows it in the graph. We can go look at it again if someone wants to see it. But now we're talking about the 4080 Ti. Because remember, I did say last year that NVIDIA could also release the 4080 Ti. I said at the time that I just don't know when they would do it or why they would do it. But here we are a year later, and here you have it, folks. This is the 4080 Ti. Just like I said, it would come out at some point. I didn't know what form, but now we know what it is. It's a 4080 Super, but it's basically a 4080 Ti parading around in the public as a 4080 Super. So there's your 4080 Ti. So they went and did it. They actually launched the 4080 Ti with a really weird name, which I don't really understand why, but they wanted brand consistency because they were going to do 3 GPUs. But what was really stupid is they launched 4070 Ti Super. That name is very dumb. I hope they never do that ever again. Especially the fact that it has no reference Founders Edition card. Like, why? But anyway, that's all NVIDIA's choice. Whatever they want to do, that's fine. They can do that. But that's the reality. So I guess the takeaway here is the 4080 Ti, and I'm going to continue referring to it as 4080 Ti for this review. So the 4080 Ti is a $1,000 graphics card. So depending on how you look at it, it is not only is it $200 cheaper than the 4080, because the 4080 had one of the most ridiculous pricings for an 80 tier product ever. It is also $200 cheaper than the 3080 Ti. This is the true comparison that every reviewer failed to realize. Everyone was so bent on comparing it to the 4080, not realizing that they're dealing with a 4080 Ti in disguise. Specs. They reveal the truth. Now, the price of the 3080 Ti, MSRP, $1,200. So they went from $1,200 3080 Ti in 2021. Now, granted, you could never purchase one of these at that price during that entire year, and it wasn't until like a month or two prior to the 40 series launch that you could actually get one of these at a lower price, because these eventually went down to like $800 when they were EOL and they were trying to clear out stock via the rebate program that they had going with Best Buy and others. So prior to that, this was like $1,200 MSRP, and most people that bought these paid way more than that. Unless you were a crypto guy that had like sideline deals with MSI or whoever else, EVGA, and you could get bulk quantities of these, and you were willing to use these for mining because these are all LHR. Anyway, now I'm going off on a tangent. The point is, this card is a $1,200 graphics card. The successor is the 4080 Ti, and this card is a $1,000 MSRP graphics card. So now, in my mind, NVIDIA is kind of like playing the hero to themselves, I guess. Like nvidia has basically split into two. Like there's Piccolo, which is like the evil nvidia, and there's Kame, which is like the good nvidia. You know, now there's like two different nvidias. There's like evil nvidia and good nvidia, and they're both green. You know, like Piccolo from Dragon Ball Z. So you've got the benevolent good nvidia, who was like, we must be kind to the peasants, and we must lower the price of the 4080 Ti, and we do not want to intimidate them, so we'll call it Super, so it has a more, you know, approachable name. If it says Ti, people might think that it's, you know, it's like super expensive or whatever. Maybe there's some kind of psychological reason why they didn't name it Ti. But the point is, they're basically being nice for once. I don't know how else to say it. They actually lowered the price of their Ti, their 4080 Ti, to $1,000 as opposed to $2,000, or not $2,000, $1,200 on the previous generation. So, Kami's locked in a bottle. Good Nvidia. It's as good as dead. Well, we'll see, because okay, I feel like the Super series is basically like Kami, like doing his thing, whereas the original 40 series was basically Piccolo doing his thing. So when 50 series comes out later this year, that's gonna be the return of Piccolo. That's gonna be, AKA, that's the return of evil Nvidia, or Ngridia, or whatever you want to call the evil Nvidia. Just know it's like there's two Nvidias now. It's like Nvidia has bipolar. It's like split personality, or DID, dissociative identity disorder, whatever you want to call it. Nvidia has it. You know, like Nvidia has it all at this point. You can tell by looking at their stock price. So they can call it whatever they want. You know, this is, in my mind, this is a 4080 Ti. I'll continue to call this 4080 Ti. There's nothing wrong with me calling it that. I just call it like it is. I look at the specs and I'm like, hey, you know what? This is the same as a 3080 Ti. Therefore, it's a 4080 Ti. You know, like cross this Super thing out and write the word Ti there. Evil King Nvidia. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, these Dragon Ball Z references, like, it's so weird. You know, you can literally use Dragon Ball Z references for, like, as analogies to all sorts of aspects of everyday life. It is bizarre. But there have been so many times where I've been able to use like a Dragon Ball Z, relate something in the real world to like a Dragon Ball Z analogy or something like that. I don't know. Whatever. Let's move on. That's this went way off the rails. Like this review went way off the rails. Anyway, the point is 4080 Super, it's like 2% faster than the original, so you'll never notice the difference. That means that it's like 1% slower than in rasterization, or maybe 2% slower in rasterization in some cases, versus the 7900 XTX. So it's like, does AMD need to do anything to respond? I am of the opinion that an AMD could literally do nothing and no one would care. But they probably should do something because of all the noise. Like, if they ignore the noise, I think what will end up happening is people will probably start not looking at the XTX anymore. So I think AMD needs to do there's two different options. There's two different options that I think AMD can approach to counter the 4080 Ti. One is, like what reviewers were saying, was they think that AMD should lower the MSRP of the XTX down to $900. Because if the 7900 XT has an MSRP of like $749, that's still $150 below $900. So there's still a decent gap. There's a noticeable price gap between those two. So, or they could make the 7900 XT go down to $700, like $699. Because that's still $200. So here, let's do this in Paint. I think it'll make more sense if we do it in Paint. Hold on. Yeah, actually, that's what I wanted to do. Let's go to Paint again. Okay, so how should AMD respond to 4080 Ti. So I think they could do two different things. One, lower the price of the XTX to $900. Like, chop off $100. They could do that. That's one option. The other option would be to... Why does this... This is why I really hate this version of Paint. How did it do that? Like, why did it... Anyway. Why is it, like, doing this? Like, it's like there's some kind of thing. I don't know what's up with, like, Windows 11 Paint. I really need to put the Windows 10 Paint on here. There is a way to do that. RK, send me something. I'm definitely going to do that because this is super annoying. So, they can release a 7950 XTX. They could do something like what they did with the 6950 XT. They could do like a 50 refresh. Incremental, mid-generation refresh. They could do something like that. I don't know what options they have because it's like, is there... My question for this second option is, first of all, is there VRAM that can clock higher than what they already have? Because if there isn't, then there isn't much they can do. There's only two things they can do. They can raise the power limit, which I don't think they should do because this card already uses like 50 watts more than the 4080 Ti. So I can't really see them do that. I mean, at least they could probably get away with raising power limit by like 5%, but I don't really think they can do more than that. So the main thing is the VRAM. If there exists a newer VRAM, they could clock it higher just like they did with the 6950 XT, because the main difference between the 6950 XT and the original 6900 XT was the VRAM. The newer card had better VRAM. So it, you know, like, that would be the one thing, that would be like the one lever that they could do. So, I don't know. Like, the options are either they can lower the price to some extent or release a 7950 XTX. Like, that's really the only response that they can do, realistically. I'd rather them attempt this, but I just don't know if this is an option. I feel like lowering the price, I don't really know if that, how much that helps, to be honest. Because the thing is, if all you do is lower the price, I feel like that doesn't really make much of a difference in the grand scheme of things. Whereas if you release a new named product, like how nvidia is basically doing that with these supercards, you at least get the public's attention. You know, you get attention more than if you just lower the price. So that's basically it. So the 7900s are a little lower in price. Yeah, they are. No, this is the Ti, because this is the same exact specs as the 3080 Ti. Can they add more cache with chiplets to do? I don't know if they can. That's an interesting question. I did not think about that. Adding more cache to the existing XTX. I don't know if they can do that, because to me, that's like a redesign. I don't think they're going to invest the engineering resources required to do that. So no, I don't see them doing that. The only thing they can do are some simple changes, like change the VRAM so that they have more memory bandwidth, because that could make a tangible uplift. Because if we look at the, for instance, where is it? If we look at, where is this thing? Yeah, like, go back to the original. So here's the 6900 XT. And if we go and look at the 6950 XT, check this out. 6950 XT is, according to Tech Power, now this is not the be-all, end-all, but this is a rough ballpark figure, 8% faster than the original. So the 6950 XT, by just changing the VRAM, and let me see, is there, what are the clocks on this thing? This thing clocks at like Game clock is 2015. What's the game clock on this thing? Okay, so 2015, 2100. So yeah, see, so they basically have like a slight overclock on the 6950 XT. So they could probably do that, like with better binning, I guess, more mature process in manufacturing. They could potentially do this, like release a 7950 XTX, but really, I think they would have to improve the VRAM because the memory clock on this thing is 2250, 18 gigabit per second effective versus 16 gigabit per second effective. See, this change is what made most of the difference between the 6900 XT and the 6950 XT. The RAM itself is a different type of VRAM. Like they're using a newer chip from, I think it's Hynix on these. I can't remember, but it's been a while since I looked at this card. I mean, I have this card. I barely have ever used it now that I think about it. But yeah, this card, I think the RAM chips are definitely different. That much I can tell you. So if there's a newer RAM, like if there's a new memory chip, let's think about it. Like if they can squeeze out 8% on this, if they can squeeze 5 to 10% improvements with a 7950 XTX, that would at least make them be able to stay at like $1,000. I mean, it would already be faster than the Super because the Super is like 1% slower in rasterization. But because they're so close, it depends on who is the target buyer. For the average buyer, because these GPUs are gamer-focused products, the 4080 Super looks like better value because at the exact same price, you're getting access to those NVIDIA exclusive features that you don't have on AMD. Although AMD does have a pretty good exclusive feature. There's two actually. So one is fluid motion frames. You cannot do that in every DX11, every DX12 game on NVIDIA. You have to leverage DLSS 3, and that requires the game to have support for DLSS 3. Whereas with AMD, now with their fluid motion frames, you can turn that on in any game. Now there are some caveats there, but again, there's caveats with any sort of frame generation technology. So it does have that. Other than that, like really the only thing that's better on the NVIDIA card is ray tracing. But again, it depends on what games you actually play that would benefit from that better ray tracing experience. And the reality is if you're already spending $1,000 on a graphics card, you better be at minimum 1440p resolution because otherwise I can't see why anybody would spend that much money on a GPU if they're playing at 1080p. So, but anyway, if they can eke out 8% with a 7950 XT though, then I think then the value proposition swings back over into AMD's favor again. Because at the end of the day, the AMD card is still 24 gigabytes of VRAM. So it's still way more RAM than the 4080 Ti. Now the thing is, that doesn't really matter too much at 1440p. So that's the reason why it's kind of like a moot point. But if you're playing at 4K and you are having to use frame generation and those sort of things, like fluid motion frames, for instance, at 4K, this is going to give you more longevity than 16. Like, it's just more future-proof. I mean, there's a reason why the 4090 has 24 gigabytes of VRAM. So, likewise, the AMD flagship also has 24 gigabytes of VRAM. So, the 6950 XT is just an overclocked 6900 XT. Well, that's what I said earlier, but it's slightly overclocked, but it also has different RAM chips though. And the RAM chips are actually what makes more of the difference because it has more memory bandwidth. Like with the 60, yeah, exactly. Is exactly what they did. So, I mean, ultimately that's going to depend on if they have newer RAM chips to use. If there's faster VRAM chips, that's going to make the difference. Because, see, this same argument comes up like if someone has a 6900 XT, they're going to have to rely on Silicon Lottery to be able to match a 6950 XT. Because the thing is, like, if someone overclocks a 6900 XT, that doesn't mean that someone else with a 6950 XT can't overclock the 6950 XT. You see what I'm saying? So they both start at different baselines. If the 6950 XT starts here, and the 6900 XT starts there, and then you overclock the 6900 XT to match or maybe slightly exceed the 6950 XT, you can just do the same exact thing with the 6950 XT. So newer RAM, more mature node, or not different node, but you guys know what I'm saying. Newer binning. There's a reason why 6950 XT is able to consistently hit those higher clocks. AMD's too busy taking billions with MI300 pre-order. Well, I mean, and NVIDIA's not. NVIDIA is also like too busy catering to that upper echelon of society. You know, that AI target buyer, you know, that stuff. I mean, AMD's, they're trying to do fast second. I don't know if they can pull it off because it's all about supply at this point. I heard AMD made the 6750 XT because the newer, faster VRAM chips were cheaper for AMD. I don't know if they were cheaper. There may have been some rebate incentive from Hynix or Samsung or whoever was supplying the memory. It was one of those two. But yeah, that's typically how it goes. So if that exists, if they can do that, then yeah, they could respond with like a 50. And that would kind of, now that I think about it, it would actually be more in AMD's favor to do that if they aren't going to release a new successor flagship from the RDNA 4. I mean, there's a lot of rumors about RDNA 4 only being some kind of mid-range thing. I don't really know if that's true or not. If it is, then it's going to be like another 5700 XT moment for them. And the real flagship would be when RDNA 5 comes out. So if they have to do that, then I think it makes sense to do a refresh with like a 50, like a 7950 XT, as an example, and just repeat that across the stack, because that's the only thing. Like, NVIDIA did Super on 20 series, they skipped it on 30 series, but AMD did 50 on 6000 series, so it's like they could either skip it, slightly lower prices, or do nothing. I mean, they could also do nothing. I mean, that's another option. The third option is do nothing. Do nothing and let the market just determine what happens. But I don't think it would be in their best interest to do that. But I could be wrong. Maybe that is the best option. So, and plus Intel is going to launch a new graphics card this year as well. So lots of interesting stuff is going to happen throughout this year. We're getting new CPUs, new motherboards, new Intel graphics cards, new NVIDIA graphics cards. So it's like, these are new graphics cards. These may seem like new graphics cards, but you know, these are not the true new graphics cards. This is what they call the mid-generation refresh. So the true stuff is coming out later this year. So the way I think about it is, this year, if I had to sum up 2024 in a nutshell without even having lived through the entire year yet, this is the way I look at it. The first half of 2024 is all about games. It's all about video games. Now, if you don't care about video games, if you only care about hardware, that's fine. But I'm just going to tell you guys, like, the content that you're going to see from review channels, tech channels, is going to be very repetitive. It's going to be very boring for the first half of this year. The real meat and potatoes of hardware news is going to play out in the second half of this year. So, but when you look at the video gaming market, it's the complete opposite. All the really good games are coming out in the first half of the year, which is very different from how these games have typically released. Usually, like, the second half is where all the really big ones are, like Baldur's Gate and all that stuff. You know, like Starfield, whatever your opinion is on Starfield, but all the like really, really big games, they come out in the second half typically. Although we did have a lot of really great ones in the first half of last year, like Hogwarts Legacy as a prime example. But this year, it's kind of the complete opposite. All the really good games are coming out first half of the year. All the computer hardware, all the really good computer hardware is coming out in the second half of the year. That's when you're going to see 5090. That's when you're going to see Zen 5. Whatever Intel's going to do. I'm guessing Intel's GPU is coming out in the second half. If RDNA 4 comes out, that's going to come out in the second half. You know, like, all the good stuff's coming out in the second half. All the cool, interesting new stuff, it's all coming out in the second half. It's all probably going to start with Zen 5, if I had to guess. And we could talk about like when to expect these things. I'll make a chart and we'll see how accurate I am by the end of the year. But I'm going to go ahead and make predictions later in the stream on when I think things are going to come out. Without having any insider knowledge, without having any access to leaks. I don't really listen too much to channels that focus on leaks. I'm not going to say that they're useful or useless or whatever. I just go off of history. Because I know history tends to repeat how things are. Companies have the same habits. So it's like, I just go off of that, and I can logically make predictions on when these things come out. And I'm pretty much accurate most of the time. The one exception was Intel's Arc A770. That one, I predicted it would come out in July, and then August, and it still didn't come out. And then I was like, okay, I don't know what's going to happen. And then it ended up coming out on the exact same day as the 4090. Which was October. So way, way later. So that one I got wrong, but all the other ones I got right. All right, so you feel like AMD could do a few things, change to GDDR7. I don't know about GDDR7 because that's probably going to have different pinouts, but possibly. The node's already mature, so if they wanted to do factory overclocks for higher, they could probably do that. Chiplet architecture to add Xilinx AI processor. Yeah, but see, you're talking about stuff that's probably a new generation. Like putting an AI coprocessor or something. That would make more sense in a CPU more so than a GPU. Because a GPU can already be programmed to do AI workloads. The 3080 Ti also had the full... Yeah, no, I know that. But it's still the same SM count. Starfield runs really great on the 6700 XT and on the new big Starfield patch. Oh, I didn't know if it even had ghosting issues. I don't remember it having those issues. Intel kept delaying Arc for software and drivers. That was a mess. Was that really it, though? I guess it was to a degree, but I don't know. Like, I feel like they had to, at some point, they realized they had to get it out into the market because no matter how good their internal automated testing was, it's never going to be able to match what happens when it's in the real world. You know what I mean? So they just finally had to put it out there. So, yeah, I know they had the cards since like Q1 of last year. Because I remember they put the trailer for the graphics card went up on their site in March. And it said coming summer 2023. And then it never did. It never showed up. It came out like October. So I was like, well, that's not summer. I kept thinking maybe it's going to come out in the beginning of September because then they can technically claim that it's in the summer. And then it didn't show up at all until a whole month and a half later. So I think that's going to be the most interesting one. We already know how fast it is, though. For those that want to know how fast the Intel's A or B780, Intel's B780, that's probably because it's going to be Battle Mage 780. Because remember, there was supposed to be an A780, according to Linus. There was supposed to be an A780, but it was canceled, or they chose to rename it the A770. I don't know. But anyway, the point is we already know how fast it is. it's going to be as fast as this graphics card. I'm going to make a prediction, and I hope that Intel can prove me wrong, but I'm going to go ahead and say that Battle Mage, the fastest Intel graphics card, is going to be similar in speed to an RTX 4070. And keep in mind, I'm referring to the RTX 4070, not the 4070 Super, not the 7800 XT, the vanilla 4070. This is how it will probably perform. It's going to be about this fast. And if it achieves the level of the 4070, that will be a success. They will succeed. If it is not as fast or not close to the 4070, plus or minus 5%, we'll say, then it is a failure. If it cannot be close to the 4070 and it's slower than the 4070, then it's a failure in my mind. If it is around the 4070, then it is a success. If it is better than the 4070, like let's say it's like a 4070 Super or a 7800 XT, then it is a slam dunk. It is a home run, instant sale. It'll be amazing if it's as fast. If Battle Mage's flagship can match a 7800 XT, that will be out of this world insane crazy. Like if it can match that performance level. Because that means, because you guys aren't thinking about things in perspective. You guys aren't thinking like engineers. If someone thinks that Intel's flagship can match a 4070 Ti Super or a 4080 or a 7900 XT or XTX, they're not thinking in terms of an engineer. They're not thinking in terms of how to solve the problem in a feasible go-to-market strategy. It's not a realistic expectation to have, is what I'm saying. So if we want to further illustrate this point, we have to understand where the A770 exists today and what sort of realistic performance uplift we can expect. So if we go 65% faster, if we can improve with Battle Mage by 65%, this will match the RTX 4070 vanilla. That shows you how far behind Intel is, because a 4070 is 65% faster than the A770. That is the reason why I claim that this new Battle Mage will be similar to a 4070. Because to expect more than 65% is asking for too much, in my mind. I don't think you can fix... Yeah, and I know we've had this discussion before about the problems with Intel and the hardware flaws. You don't understand. Like, you can't fix those type of flaws in like 2 years. That's like 3 to 5 years to re-engineer an entire high-level design and then do the low-level design and all that stuff. That's not going to be fixable in 2 years. But if they can work towards significant improvements that can show a generational improvement in excess of 50% gen-on-gen improvement, that is a success. And that is the reason why I really think the correct expectation for Battle Mage is RTX 4070 level performance. Anything above that, that'll be a really good result if Intel can do that. I'm not saying that Intel can't do that. You guys don't understand what I'm doing. I'm trying to set expectations appropriately. If you're expecting it to be 4070 Ti, and let's say it's not 4070 Ti when it comes out. Let's say it's exactly as I say. It's 4070 level. Well, then what is your reaction? What are you going to think? Are you going to think Intel is trash? They don't know what they're doing? They're terrible? They're incompetent? Is that what people are going to think? See, I'm trying to set the correct expectations because people don't understand these engineering challenges that they're running into. These are not easy problems to fix. You're not going to get Where's the Ti? Where's that 47? Look, guys, 4070 Ti is 106% faster. Do you really think Battle Mage is going to be 100% faster than the A770? You're talking about an insane redesign of the entire thing. You're basically saying tear down everything that Roger Kodori worked on and like do a blank slate, entirely new design from the ground up. You can't do that in 2 years. That's not how it works. These things are just too complicated. You're not going to get 106% improvement over the A770. That to me is a very unrealistic expectation. Just by RDNA 4 if that's the case. So that's what I'm telling you guys. The right expectation is to expect it to be around anything from, I'll say this, anything from the RX 7700 XT all the way up to the 7800. Let's call it this way. Let's use this range of GPUs. Anything from the 7700 XT to the 7800 XT. That is the range. Meaning I expect when that Intel Meteor comes down and lands, it's going to land in this blast radius. Somewhere between 45% to 80%. It's going to be somewhere from 45 to 80% uplift, depending on the game, when you compare an A770 to a Battle Mage flagship. I think that is the correct expectation. These are proper metrics for engineers to objectively set as goals to meet or exceed. Because I think anyone who thinks it's supposed to be 4070 Ti, that's 106%. I can tell you right now, 106% in 2 years? No. Was NVIDIA able to do that? Was NVIDIA able to do that? If we look at the 3090 to 4090, let's see, what was the uplift from 3090? Oh, look, 64%. 64%. The 4090 is 60, we'll call it 60 to 65% faster than the 3090. So guess what? NVIDIA is proving my point. NVIDIA is just doing my job for me. When it's just right there, plain as day. 64% faster than a 3090. The RTX 4090. That is a realistic expectation to have. And what did I just say earlier? 65% improvement from A770 is RTX 4070. So I rest my case on the expectations for Battle Mage, because I think that is the correct expectation to have. 106% uplift, that's not a realistic expectation. And anybody who thinks that that's what they're expecting, they're going to be very, very disappointed on the launch day of Battle Mage. AMD had to tear down everything Raja built now. Yeah, and guess how long that took? Guess how long that took? 5 years. It took them 5 years. Remember, Vega was 2017. When did RDNA 2 come out? 2020. But you guys do know that Navi 1 and Navi 2 did not start immediately after Vega launched. They were in development prior to Vega launching. So 5 years. So, and here's the thing. If we give Intel 5 years, so let's think about it. 2022 was when Arc launched. The true successor, if we're talking like an entirely new architecture, re-engineered from the ground up, would be around 2027. So, and if you're talking like fully re-engineered, so let's look at this. Let's look at AMD then. Let's look at AMD, because that's a good point. Felipe is bringing up a really good point. Let's look at Vega. Let's look at Radeon 7. Radeon 7 was the fastest Vega. It was GCN's last stand against the 1080 Ti. and the 2080 and the 2080 Ti. It had to do battle with the 20 series and hold the line until RDNA 2 could come out. But it wouldn't be for almost 2 years later when the 6900 XT would finally arrive, just like Goku on the battle against the Saiyans on Earth. So this is basically Piccolo and the Earth's defenders. This is the Earth's defense force fighting Nappa and Vegeta and holding them off until Goku could arrive. Goku, aka 6900 XT. So, this thing came out very beginning of 2019. When did Goku show up? Very end of 2020. Like I said, almost 2 years. Almost 2 years of holding the line. Of course, you had Gohan, aka the 5700 XT, powering up and doing all this stuff and jumping and backflips and stuff. You know, all that stuff was going on in 2019. But then you had this, and you had a bunch of old Vega cards. Vega 64, basically TN. Vega 56, that's Yamcha. You know, like, these guys aren't really going to do much, right? So, like, it's GCN's last stand. So let's look at the performance uplift, though, because we're talking like brand new architecture. So this is the old architecture. And where is Goku? Oh, look. Goku is 95% faster. The 6900 XT is 95% faster than the A770. I mean, not the A770, I'm sorry. The Radeon 7, although the A770 is kind of like the Radeon 7. So let's look back again at the A770. So, what is 100% faster? Guess what? The 3090. The 6950 XT, the 3090, and the 4070 Ti. These cards, if Intel was to build Yamcha's an RX 460. Oh, poor Yamcha. Wow, that's an insult to Yamcha, man. That's just rubbing salt on the wound. That's not right. Yeah, I would at least have assigned him like Yamcha could have been the R9 Fury. Why the 460? No, Yamcha could have been the RX 480. He could have been the RX or the 580. Yeah, it could be the 580. Basically, Yamcha with long hair is RX 480. Yamcha with like a bowl cut or a buzz cut Yamcha is RX 580. That's the difference. Okay, so anyway, because it's funny, like somebody mentioned the 4070 Ti. Well, guess what? If Intel did what AMD did from like Vega GCN all the way to RDNA 2, you're talking about a 100% uplift. So guess what? If Intel does a whole new design, that can do a 100% uplift. And guess what? These cards, aka 4070 Ti level performance, is 100% faster than the A770. So yeah. If they do the whole like Earth Defenders, if A770 can hold off, and then you get the new thing, Battle Mage is basically a whole new Goku from King Kai and Kaioken, all that stuff, then yeah, then it could probably be like a 3090. Then they can do 3090. But do I really think that's the right expectation to have? I don't know about that. I don't think... It depends on how long Battle Mage have been in development. Because maybe they could. I could be proven wrong. I would love to be proven wrong on this one. I would love to see an Intel Battle Mage that rivals the 6950 XT or the RTX 3090. That would be really nice to see if that could actually happen. I just don't know if that's the correct default expectation to have. Like that's something to aspire to, but if they don't meet that expectation, I don't think you should be disappointed if they can't do 100% uplift. Because 100% uplift, that's like a complete redesign, as we just showed with AMD. I think Intel bring Battle Mage at all to market would be good. Would be a good sign. Around 60% performance. Yeah, see that I think that's the correct expectation to have. I just don't know if you can do 100% uplift in one generation. Because think about it, AMD had these intermediate ones. They had like 5700 XT. You know, like they didn't just jump from Radeon 7 to 6900 XT. Like there was an intermediate one, and it wasn't even that much faster. So than the Radeon 7. So I think I think we'll see about 60 to 80% uplift from Intel. I would hope. I mean, I'd be happy with anything in that range. I would accept that. Anything above that would be great. That's just icing on the cake at that point. So they can add tiles together with Battle Mage, maybe. Yeah, they could. I mean, but the thing is, see, the thing with the tiles, as we've seen with AMD, I feel like doing chiplet / tiles on a GPU, it's much more challenging to achieve the theoretical performance uplifts, if that makes sense. Because I think AMD probably was expecting to get higher uplift by going the MCD, GCD design, and I think they kind of didn't really, because what is the uplift, right? Like, how much faster is an XTX over the 6900 XT? It's a 45 to 50% uplift. So that is a respectable uplift. I personally think that the 50 series from NVIDIA is going to be a similar uplift. I don't think NVIDIA is going to get like 60% plus on the 5090 over the 4090. I think it'll be in like the 40% or the upper 30% on the next generation from NVIDIA. If you overclock both, there is a one. Yeah, you close the gap because because you hit a ceiling in terms of what the GPU's able to scale to clockwise. But the thing is the memory, though. I feel like the memory on the 6950 XT is just straight up better. Like, if you overclock the memory on the 6900 XT, you're not going to be able to get... Like, you can still overclock the memory on the 6950 XT even higher. So that's why it still ends up being faster by a few percentage points. But it's still very close. It basically ends up being the difference between a 4080 and a 4080 Super. 6900 XT, 6950 XT is basically the same as a 4080. Like, when you overclock them, like you just said, 1 to 2% difference. Guess what? That's the difference between a 4080 and a 4080 Super. When do you think 5000 series is coming out? I hope the price reductions instead of more. We can get into that. Let me see. Was there anything else? What else did I want to talk about in here besides that? Oh, I did. I guess we can talk about that now. So, So we've got 4 seasons. We have Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. Why does it... Man, this paint is trash. Q4. Okay. So, Q1, RTX. Why did it cut me off? Super. Man, this paint is garbage. RTX 40 Super 40, whatever. And then there's Ryzen 8000G stuff, which is Zen 4 based. Or Zen 4 Plus, I guess. I don't know. I don't know exactly if it's Zen 4 or Zen 4 Plus. It's they've done some tweaks to the fabric clock. So I would say it's like Zen 4 Plus. That's how I've always looked at even numbered Ryzen products. You know, like, think about like Ryzen 2000, that was Zen Plus. Ryzen 4000, that was Zen 2 Plus, etc. Man, this paint is so bad. Like, it is so bad compared to the original. So Ryzen 6000 was Zen 3 Plus. etc. So therefore, Ryzen 8000 is Zen 4 plus. So see, that's why I say it's like the plus. Because they have changed things. F clock is different as far as I know. I think the fabric clock on the 8700G, for example, runs at 2400 megahertz. So that's like 400 megahertz faster than the Zen 4 fabric clock. So that should translate into better performance, particularly memory performance. So we can kind of expect Zen 5 to have a faster fabric clock, if that makes sense. I hope that RDNA 4 releases this year with a mid-range GPU with dedicated RT cores with the same. That would be interesting. That would be interesting to see. With same raster as 4080 and faster RT than a set. Yeah, that would be cool to see, actually. Because I have been waiting to see what AMD plans to do regarding dedicated hardware for ray tracing. Because I think it's pretty much time for them to do that and get on board with that sooner rather than later. 4080 is certainly potent, a lower cost unit. Yeah. I see. The thing is, I don't really know if it's becoming mainstream yet, but it will be more mainstream in the next 5 years. I think when we see, so here's when I see ray tracing really, really taking off. If and when the next console generation comes out, that will kind of set the tone on how mainstream ray tracing is. Because think about it like this, guys. The consoles, when a new console generation comes out, that kind of sets the baseline for how games should run at a specific preset, like the console optimized settings or whatever you want to call them. And so that kind of sets the precedent on how the games should be rendered across the board. So, and until the consoles standardize ray tracing, because they can do ray tracing today on the shaders, just like the way AMD does ray tracing. So until you get that dedicated, the ability for consoles to do dedicated ray tracing on hardware that's designed for ray tracing, not just running it in shaders, then I think ray tracing I would consider ray tracing mainstream. But until that happens, I don't consider ray tracing mainstream. Because, like, I'm just one person. But when I think about the games that I actually play, none of them really need ray tracing. Like, okay, Hogwarts Legacy, that has ray tracing. You don't need to use ray tracing in it. The ray tracing, sometimes it actually does look better, but oftentimes it doesn't really make much of a difference. Forspoken, that game has ray tracing. It does absolutely nothing to the visual quality. So there's literally no reason to run ray tracing in that game. And other than those two, what other games do I actually play? Oh, Avatar. Avatar is a good game, and it's a very nice looking game, and it has ray tracing. Avatar, I think, kind of sets the new standard in terms of forcing ray tracing to always be on in the background, if that makes sense. So something like Avatar, that would be a game, like if more games were like that, then yeah, then if the majority of games, let's put it this way, when the majority of games release in a state where they come with RT built in and they're made to run with RT running standard like it does in Avatar, then we can say that it's mainstream. But until that happens, no, it's not considered mainstream. It's still an optional thing that's not necessary. Because even some of the biggest titles that are coming to PC this year, like Horizon Forbidden West, that the complete edition, that game's coming to PC in March, and it doesn't have ray tracing. It doesn't, or it's like pre-baked in or something. I don't know. It remains to be seen, like what they do. But everything I've looked at so far seems to indicate that that will not use ray tracing. So, yeah, but see, that doesn't count. Minecraft doesn't count because that's not a game that was designed initially with RT. So I don't count Minecraft. I don't count old games that had ray tracing added later on. That's not the standard way. Like you can't say that, oh, it's mainstream because some old game got it added, you know, like okay, no, that's not how it works. It's when new games like Avatar come to market with RT features baked in as standard operation for the game's rendering pipeline. That is when we can say, when the majority of games are like that from day one of launching, then we can say the ray tracing is mainstream. But until that happens, it's not mainstream. Yeah, Alan Wake 2, yes. But see, the thing with Alan Wake 2, single-handedly, that game will go down in history as the game that single-handedly executed the 1080 Ti from existence. So that's how I will remember Alan Wake 2. That's the game that made the legendary GTX 1080 Ti completely irrelevant and dead. It finally defeated the 1080 Ti. Finally, a game came out and defeated the 1080 Ti. Just like Heihachi Mishima dying at the end of Tekken 7. When Raven says, Heihachi Mishima is dead. Well, guess what? Alan Wake 2 came out, and you know what happened? We can now say the GTX 1080 Ti is dead. That's basically what Alan Wake 2 is. What's messed up is if Avatar has ray tracing so ingrained, why did get game goes when what? Why did I get game codes when I bought them? Yeah, because it's an AMD title. Because AMD partnered with them. It's not that RT is bad in visuals in Bedrock. Guys, it's not like AMD can't do ray tracing. AMD can do ray tracing as well. It's like a generation behind. It's like 30 series. It's not that RT is bad in visuals in Bedrock, Minecraft. But the thing is, it does it completely differently. Minecraft, but Mahjong refuses. The only community queue. Yeah, but again, you're talking about a game that's so old and it's like it was added to it. That doesn't count. That literally doesn't count. Like, I wouldn't even, like, if you hadn't even mentioned Minecraft, I would have never even thought of Minecraft when talking about ray tracing. At least nobody mentioned Cyberpunk. I was waiting for someone to mention Cyberpunk. That game is trash as far as I'm concerned. I still don't have that game. Even though they fixed it last year, I still don't have that game. I still haven't played Cyberpunk at all. I don't plan on it anytime soon. There's just too many better games. There's just way too many better quality games. I mean, let's put it this way. I'll probably have played GTA 6 before I end up playing Cyberpunk. So, and we're going to be waiting a long time for that. So, yeah, no, Avatar is a good game. Nobody said, who said otherwise? The 4080, yeah, yeah, I know. Avatar's RT doesn't seem to be too intensive because even yeah, but I see, the thing is, I think Avatar is a really good example of a game that runs relatively well, but it is a demanding game. But it's not a stupid overly demanding game like Forspoken was, or The Last of Us Part 1 was when those games came out, or Jedi Survivor. You know, like, we had a bunch of games in the first half of 2023 that were so ridiculously hard to run, but the games didn't even look like they were supposed to be that hard to run. You know, maybe The Last of Us, arguably, that game had pretty good looking visuals, but like Forspoken ran like garbage on almost everything except the best AMD and nvidia cards. And then Jedi Survivor ran like trash for like 3 months until they patched it, and then it's still very CPU bound, and it doesn't even look that good compared to the original Jedi game or Fallen Order. So it's like, like you had all kinds of weird games that didn't really look that good, but they were super stupidly challenging to run. And then Avatar was like a breath of fresh air because it came out at the end of the year, low key. It was on AMD's like partnered game list, so you got it for free. Like the reason how I got Avatar because I got the 7800X 3D. When I got the 7800X 3D, I got Avatar's code from buying this processor. So that's how I got Avatar. But yeah, still need to finish that game too. But see, that game looks really good and it runs really good on a lot of different systems. But it is at the same time it is a demanding game, but it's not like The Last of Us Part 1 where you try to run the game and unless you're on either a 6 gigahertz Intel or an X3D CPU, you're going to be like CPU bound in some scenarios. Or if you're not on a like what's the word? Appropriately sized graphics card for the resolution of your monitor, it's going to run like trash on anything else. You know what I mean? So, and don't even get me started about Intel A770 and The Last of Us, because yeah, that was not pretty. The 7800 XT, FSR 3, what? Jedi Survivor needed DLSS mod to be playable. Well, no, Jedi Survivor was playable, but the thing is, like, the only way to play Jedi Survivor, The Last of Us, Forspoken, those games, you had to basically have literally the best hardware for a particular resolution, is what I'm saying. So it's like, for example, if you're on 4K and you want to play Forspoken at native 4K on launch day, literally the 4090 was the only GPU that could do it. And even the 4090 in the launch version of Forspoken would dip below 60 frames per second in Forspoken at 4K native resolution. So it's like you were forced to have to use some form of upscaling, or you had to compromise on visual quality. So, whoa, wait, there's a lot of, wait, what happened? You're talking about Cyberpunk Psycho Mode? Oh, Psycho Mode. Oh, yeah. For me, Avatar had some places where FPS would drop. On that was one day. Okay. I played it on stream, and I didn't have any issues with it. I played it on, actually, I played it earlier this year, too. Like, I did a play session on the first week of January. I remember I played a lot of Avatar on stream. The first week of this year, I'll never forget the first week of 2024 because I did a 5-day water fast. I did not eat for 5 days straight from New Year's all the way to the 5th day of the year. And that whole week, that very first week, because New Year's I think was like a Monday, yeah, all 5 days, I literally streamed different games. Like I did Dead Space, I did Avatar, I did Halo 2 from the Master Chief Collection, and then I did like This Week in Tech like this, and then some other game. I forgot what other stuff I did, but that was mainly what I did. So, and Avatar ran great. So I played Avatar on I think it was on the XTX. Yeah, it was on XTX at 4K. And I think we had frame generation turned on. And I remember not being able to use... Yeah, that's right. I could not use Afterburner if I was trying to turn on frame gen with FSR 3. Yeah, I remember that now. You could still do it, and then you could turn it on, but you could also use like AMD's overlay, but AMD's overlay would not show up in the stream. You were using 5600X at 1440 Jedi Survivor with 4080, so you needed the frame generation. The 7800X 3D and the 4090, you get 1440 native res. You get around that. I aim for 200 in all my games. I have high standard. I don't know, man. I don't know if those are realistic expectations for a lot of games. Because some of those games, The Last of Us, Jedi Survivor, yeah. Good luck trying to hit 200 frames per second in Jedi Survivor on Coruscant. I'm fine with 60. Yeah, I like 60 to 120. Or I like either solid 60 or solid 120 and no changes. Just solid 60 or solid 120. Like some games you can't even play above 60. You know, like I don't think you can play Persona. Like I haven't played it yet, but Persona 3 Royal's out. And that's another topic that I want to talk about, games that are coming out soon, because Sony did their PlayStation State of Play, and regardless of whether you pay attention to PlayStation or not, PlayStation is a good, whenever they do State of Play, it is a good window into the future of what games will be in terms of hardware demands when they come out to PC and etc. like that. So that's why that's relevant, and that's one of the things I want to talk about on the stream at some point here soon. Jedi were around that frame gen. Well, yeah, the frame generation, that's gonna double. But like if you were at 100, if you were 100 with frame gen, that means that you were sub 60. Because you were dipping to 50 is what that means. Which basically means, if that was your range, if your range was 100 to 120 with frame gen, that basically means that you're, without it, you were like in the 50s. Because that's literally from 50 to 60. You know which game ran really, really good with frame generation? Lies of P. Lies of P was probably the best game that could showcase frame gen without any artifacts, without any negative things. Like that game, I don't know, man. That game, Lies of P, ran so good. It already started with a high frame rate. So you were literally running like 240 FPS. The frame generation for Lies of P was like 240 FPS. No, I'm talking about fluid motion frames. I turned on fluid motion frames in Radeon settings, and Lies of P goes up to 240 frames per second using AMD's fluid motion frames. So, there's another thing that I just realized. So, like, if you use, and I might need to test this. Yeah, I do need to test this. I need to take an NVIDIA graphics card, and I need to use the NVIDIA graphics card. I think if you use NVIDIA to render the game, but then you output to the monitor using a Radeon card, could you turn on fluid motion frames? I think someone already talked about that. That would mean if you could do fluid motion frames on an APU, you could effectively like take a laptop that has a Ryzen 8700G and an RTX whatever, doesn't matter, and you could use like DLSS. You would have access to DLSS, but then you could also do fluid motion frames. Luke FZ had a DLSS mod for Lies of P. The FPS was already 180 at that. Yeah, with fake frames in it. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, all this frame generation stuff, like, I don't know, but to me, it feels like this is an attempt to. I can't see myself being the only person with this opinion, but when I first heard about frame generation technology, part of me thought that it was really cool sounding, but then the other half of me thought, well, I was more cynical about it and was like, wait a minute. Are they coming out with frame generation because they can't build hardware that's powerful enough to drive games at higher resolutions? Like, is that why they're doing this? Because, like, 4K 4K native has always been like the target that they've been striving to achieve, but it doesn't really, like it's very inconsistent because it's like only the 4090 can legitimately do 4K 60 consistently. But then even every now and then there are these games that will cause it to dip. Like Forspoken always sticks out in my mind as like the first game that I remember that was making the 4090 dip below 60 commonly at release. Now they patched that game, they added frame generation, but again, like you're adding frame generation. Why are you adding frame generation to a game? Why are you making synthetic frames? Like what's the reason for doing this? Is it because you want the game to be smoother? Or do you need to use it as a method to work around the hardware limitations where the GPU itself is not strong enough to handle the traditional rasterization, the rendering? Now, you turn on ray tracing. That makes it even harder to run. You turn RT on, and then, oh man, you turn RT on in Forspoken at 4K native resolution, and you just lost 20% of your frames on a 4090. Like, with no visual improvement. You know what I'm saying? Like, what? Like, what? Why is this in this game? Like, why is ray tracing in this game? Like, this is why I'm so skeptical when it comes to ray tracing. Because it's so, like, it's not standardized upon, and you have game studios that will release a game that will claim to have RT, and then it cuts your frame rate by 20%. It doesn't change the visual quality at all. At all. There's no difference. Now, I'm using Forspoken as an example, but it is a legitimate example because it's from an engine that might be reused for future games. Like Final Fantasy 16 on PC, for example. Hint, hint. Wink, wink. Final Fantasy 16 on PC might actually be just as hard or harder than Forspoken to run on PC. Because it already runs like garbage on the PlayStation 5 unless you use performance mode, which then uses I think it turns on FSR 1.0 for 720p upscaled to 1080 or something. I mean, and that only does 60 and it's inconsistent 60 and it still dips. So man, I can only imagine Final Fantasy 16 on PC is going to be so hard to run. Final Fantasy 15, when it first came to PC, does anybody remember how hard Final Fantasy 15 was to run on PC when it first came out? When the fastest graphics card was a 1080 Ti? Do you know how many years it took to be able... You know how many hardware generations it took to be able to play Final Fantasy 15 at 4K native resolution? Without any upscaling? It took 3 generations of GPUs. So, in fact, I probably need to go back and reevaluate how well that game runs. Because I don't think I've benchmarked Final Fantasy 15 in 4 years. So, I need to go back and look at that game. Because, I mean, think about it. Final Fantasy 15, Forspoken, and potentially Final Fantasy 16 are all using the same engine. The Luminous engine, which is a derivative of the Crystal tools, which was the engine that Final Fantasy 14 was based off of, which was a modified version of what the Final Fantasy 13 games were built off of. So, yeah. It will take 3 generations of GPUs to run Cyberpunk. Yeah, exactly. See, it's the same thing with Final Fantasy 15. So, Final Fantasy 16 is going to be a really hard game to run. I have to keep that in mind. Because Forspoken was really hard to run, so I can only imagine how much harder Final Fantasy 16 is. Because that has way more NPCs, it has way more towns, it has way more enemies that are perpetually on screen. That game is going to be hard to run. And it's probably going to use direct storage, if I had to guess. Because it was built for the PlayStation 5. So the port that means that the port would have to use direct storage. kind of like Spider-Man or whatever. Like Forspoken uses the 1.0. I don't think they're going to do 1.0. If they do 1.0 direct storage for Final Fantasy 16, then Square Enix is incompetent in my mind when it comes to porting games over to PC. But they've already proven that multiple times that they don't know how to make proper PC ports. Go look at the Final Fantasy 13 trilogy. RT in Metro. Is that Exodus Enhanced Edition or something? Looks completely different, potentially worse. Hey, there's a really cool free downloadable Silent Hill something something. Man, I kind of want to pull up Sony's State of Play. I'll probably mute it. Let's go over it, actually. Let's go look at... let me bring that up. Let me see if we can find it here. I'm just going to get some of the main parts of it. Okay. Hold on. Is this, okay. Yes, Exodus Enhanced. Hold on. Where's the... Oh, there it is. I'm just going to mute it, actually, because I don't want any kind of weird content strikes or whatever, because it's Sony and their music might be playing. So, let's look at some of these games. So, Helldivers 2. This game doesn't look like it's going to be too hard to run. See, this doesn't look that hard. It's that hard to run. So let's go to these new games. So like, okay, Stellar Blade. This game is probably going to come to the PC at some point. This game looks like it's going to be hard to run on PC. But the thing is, this is a single player game. So they could go in so many different directions with this game in terms of how hard it's going to be able to run. Or they could make it be really, really good, like Lies of P, and it could run really good on PC. But this game, as far as I know, this is going to be on PlayStation exclusively this year. It'll probably come to the PC at some point in the future. It is a Korean-developed game. There's a Korean game studio. I forgot which one. But if Lies of P is anything to go by, because that was a Korean-developed game, and that game was extremely good. It was very well optimized. The game itself was good. It was one of the more enjoyable games that I played, although it was frustrating. That game was really good. Surprise sleeper hit that was really, really good. And it ran really good on PC, and it ran really good on console. So, it shows that you can make a good-looking game that runs good on PC and console. So, this game could probably be like that. It's a kind of an action game. You know what? But the thing is, this game's graphics look way better than Lies of P. Like, it looks significantly better. I don't know if it's UE5 or whatever it's using, but it looks like the environment, like just looking at the environment and everything, like it looks better than Lies of P. Like, they have the whole camping thing going on. This makes me think of Final Fantasy 15. Some people, I like that it has skill trees. Some people are saying that this game is kind of like Nier Automata. I can kind of see the similarities, but I don't know. The whole like camping and stuff, like setting up your camp and stuff, this makes me think of Final Fantasy 15 more so than that. Yeah, Avatar is RT only. Makes more sense that 10 series is deal. Yeah, that's why the GTX. So the 10 series is basically like the Ginyu Force. They're the Ginyu Force from Dragon Ball Z. They're finally gone because they don't have the ability to power up. They're like that. They are what they are. It's like they have fixed power levels, and that's basically it. All right. So except for the 1080 Ti, 1080 Ti was basically Captain Ginyu. He managed to last a really long time. So anyway, let's move on to the next game here. Sonic Shadow. This game looks cool. I don't know if and when this is coming to PC. I assume it's going to come to the PC at some point, if not simultaneously with the PlayStation launch. This is one game that's coming out in the fall, though, if I remember correctly. It's coming out in the second half of the year. This is one of the few games that they showcase that's actually in the second half of the year. Your poor Intel A770. Wow. Wow. Yeah, but until most games are like that, we cannot say that ray tracing is becoming mainstream. All right, this game is going to be on PC literally, I think, this week. No, next week. Yeah, this one is going to be easy to run because this is another one of those Chinese games that's a mobile gacha game that you can play on console or PC. But this is going to be on PlayStation 5 like their other games. So yeah, I don't know. Some of these... This looks... To me, this is like that one... what is that one game on Nintendo where it's like you're playing paintball matches the whole time? I forget what it's called. Splatoon? I think it's Splatoon. Splatoon and Splatoon 2. This looks kind of like that. It basically looks like a battle royale genre game. Foam Stars. Dave the Diver with Godzilla. Yeah, no. Let's skip to some of the harder to run games like V Rising. That's like that's not a new game. Okay, this thing, Silent Hill. This game looks like it will be hard to run. This game is coming to the PlayStation. Actually, hold on, I take that back. This is already free to download on the PlayStation 5. I literally downloaded it yesterday evening after I saw State of Play. I haven't played it yet. Maybe I'll play this on stream. I don't know. This is supposed to be really scary, though.
Is this a dream?
This is free on PlayStation 5.
Who's there?
What do you think of the new Persona remake having RT? Oh, I ended up getting it. I have Persona 3 Royal. Yeah, we need to... We should play it now.
What are you hiding inside?
This does look good, though. See, I'm not someone who plays a lot of these type of games.
What the fuck?
I mean, I probably play like 1 or 2 of these type of games per year. But so far, like, the reviews of the people who have downloaded and played through this have said that it's extremely long for a free downloads. Because, see, Silent Hill, the short message, full game free to play. So anyway, alright, like, quiet the music here. So yeah, this is basically kind of like, it's kind of like how they do, what am I thinking of? Like, remember how Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain had some other, there was like some other Metal Gear Solid 5, some preview game that came out like a year prior to the actual game. It's kind of like that, but this one's free to download. So, but then there's the actual Silent Hill 2. Silent Hill 2 remake is going to come out. I don't know if it's this year or... But this also looks good. Like, this does look good too, but does it have the... Let's see, does it have the release date? In development for PlayStation 5. So, yeah, this one is probably next year, if I had to guess. But it's cool that they gave you a free-to-download kind of like a preview demo / whatever that weird short story thing was. And so far the reviews of that have been very positive. Okay, so next there's Judas. Oh, this is from the people who made BioShock. BioShock 1, BioShock 2, BioShock Infinite. This is a new game. I don't know if it's in the same universe. It looks similar. The last BioShock game I played was BioShock Infinite, and that was like a long time ago. That was like 2013. That was literally all about 11 years ago now. But Judas looks like it could be. This could be an interesting game. BioShock Infinite was a really fun game. This could be a really good game too. But like if these type of games start releasing with ray tracing, then ray tracing is going to become mainstream in development for PlayStation 5. So again, that one's probably next year or the year after. Metro Awakening in VR. So is this can this be played in VR on PC already? That I don't know. Yeah, BioShock did age well. That style, the art direction in that game was very good. So this is PlayStation 2 this is PlayStation VR 2. I don't know, can this be played in not currently on PC but will be on PC? Okay, yeah. That's what I thought. Okay. Cuz I feel like for VR, the two sort of genres of games that I think are, well, there's three actually. Maybe four if you count flight simulators. But I would say driving simulators, so like Forza, Gran Turismo, those type of games, racing sims, I feel like in VR, those are really fun to play in VR. Flying simulators, like Microsoft Flight Simulator or Star Wars Battle Squadrons, those are really fun. Like Star Wars in particular, Battle Squadrons is actually more fun to play in VR than it is to play outside of VR. So there are certain cases for VR. Rhythm games like Beat Saber or like workout type games, I think those are really good in VR. And then I guess the other one will be horror genre. So like Resident Evil, Silent Hill, those type of games in VR I think are also done really well for that style of gameplay, like being able to play in virtual reality. But these other ones like this, I mean, I don't know. This to me looks kind of like it. I don't know. It could be cool. I mean, I don't really. I have the PlayStation VR 2. I have a VR headset literally right here on the desk. So I can play these VR games, but I don't really play too much outside of like rhythm games and maybe if I get into racing simulators again, maybe I would try like Gran Turismo or something in VR. Metro Awakening will also be on the Metastore. Okay, yeah. Okay. But yeah. This one. Hold on, am I gonna get...
Risen one.
Man, it's playing some kind of... Okay, this game right here. This game is coming out literally next month. And what we're looking at is potentially Game of the Year 2024. Right now, on the screen, this is Dragon's Dogma 2. So, where Baldur's Gate 3 kind of came out and stole the title, plus a bunch of other ones, I feel like this game has the potential to do the exact same thing, regardless of what your opinion on Dragon's Dogma is. I think Dragon's Dogma 2 is probably going to be Game of the Year, if at the very least, this is going to be a candidate for Game of 2024. This game looks so good. I was not even expecting it to be this freeform in terms of what you can do with your character. Like, if you're playing a mage, I didn't realize you could, like, use a two-handed sword as a mage, or, like, a glaive and cast spells. Like, I feel like that is crazy cool. I mean, this looks so action-packed. This is basically, like, Black Desert if it was really good. Because Black Desert has, like, action like this, but it has no substance. It's all style and no substance. Dragon's Dogma 2 is all style and all substance. So, and that is where the difference is. March 22nd. So, you know what? There's kind of a joke. There's kind of a joke about the Horizon series. every time Horizon a Horizon game comes out, like Horizon Zero Dawn came out in 2017. It came out and then it got overshadowed by The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Then fast forward to 2022, Horizon Forbidden West came out on the PlayStation in February, and then it immediately got overshadowed by Elden Ring, which ended up becoming Game of the Year. Now, Horizon Forbidden West is coming out to PC on, you guessed it, March 22nd. And you know what also comes out on March 22nd? Dragon's Dogma 2. So it's about to get overshadowed again. And you know what's another game that's coming out on March 22nd? This game right here on the screen, Rise of the Ronin. So if you like action games that are really, really hard and really, really challenging, you're probably going to want to play this game. This game is basically made by the same people who made Neo, Neo 2, Final Fantasy Origins, Stranger of Paradise, aka Kill Chaos, and more recently last year's Wolong Fallen Dynasty. The same studio, Team Ninja, they made this game, so you can already imagine how hard this game is going to actually be to play. So, unfortunately for this game, it's coming out on the same exact day as Dragon's Dogma 2. So this one, and it's coming out as a timed exclusive for PlayStation 5. So you won't be able to play this on PC until next year. So just like how Neo 2 came out on PlayStation 4 in 2020 at the start of the pandemic, and it came out on PC literally a year later in 2021 when RTX 30 series was so hard to get and extremely overpriced. So this game's going to come out on PS5 exclusively for this year. Then I think next year it'll get the PC release. So yeah, 3 games on the 22nd. Yes, 3 big games on the 22nd. So I don't know. I really want to play Rise of the Ronin, but it depends. I have to watch more about Dragon's Dogma to see, because I'm a big fan of these type of games. Like, I like Neo 2. I've put probably hundreds of hours in Neo 2. I did not put as much into Final Fantasy Origins. I thought that game was good to play through once, and then I was kind of done with it. Wolong, I'm really close to the end, but again, I was a little bit underwhelmed, so I'm kind of curious to see how they change up the formula with this game. This game, to me, looks a lot like Wolong, except it's based in Japan, whereas Wolong was based in China. So that's going to be the difference. So it's like Chinese martial arts here. It's going to be like samurai. So I don't like the camera angle in this game, though. I don't understand why they went with this weird, like, quarter angle where you're like facing into the northeast direction on the camera. I hope there's a way to change that. If that's how the game has to be played, I don't know if I'm going to enjoy the game that much. Ronin reminds me more of Sekiro. No, I can see why you would think that, but no, because Sekiro, yeah, I mean, time, like, I guess the time frame is similar to Sekiro, but no, this is definitely not going to play like Sekiro. This is definitely going to play like all of Team Ninja's games. So the same people who made Neo, this literally reminds me of Neo, except without all the supernatural yokai that were in that game. So yeah, no, this is definitely not going to be like Sekiro at all. Because it's made by the same people that made Neo and the games that I mentioned. It's not a From Software game. Sekiro is made by From Software. So, like, the only game that I've played that plays kind of like Sekiro is Elden Ring. None of these other games play like Sekiro at all. I guess, actually, I take that back. Lies of P. Lies of P played a lot like Sekiro. It was like a weird hybrid between Bloodborne and Sekiro, but it felt more like Sekiro. And then what is this? Oh, this is Until Dawn. Until Dawn seems like, if you liked Lies of P and you didn't like Sekiro, but you liked Lies of P. Interesting. Because I thought Lies of P was actually the harder game until they patched it. Then I thought Sekiro became the harder game. Because I struggled on the swamp boss and I think the Archbishop, until I figured out you could fight the Archbishop. You could fight the same face of the Archbishop in the second phase, and then I figured out how to do that. But like, I really struggled on that swamp boss. I'll never forget the swamp boss in Lies of P before the patch, like the day one edition. Romeo, oh yeah, Romeo was hard. Romeo was hard, but there was kind of stuff you could do to kind of cheese him. Like you could run away from him a lot. But man, that swamp boss though. Oh, that swamp boss. Okay, and then of course there's the Kojima game. This game, hold on. Oh man, they're playing music, so never mind. This game, I don't know. I still haven't finished Death Stranding, so I don't know what the general opinion is of Death Stranding. Some people say it's a walking simulator. Some people say it's a masterpiece. Some people say it's a work of art. And others say it's all of the above. So this game, that looks, that always is kind of nasty to look at. That's weird. This game, my thing about Kojima's games, and because he's apparently making Death Stranding 2 and some other game, this game, unless they change the gameplay up quite a bit, I feel like this game's going to be kind of boring or more of the same unless they make it significantly less tedious, less repetitive. Then this game would actually be... I'd be more hyped for this game if it wasn't so repetitive. Like, if the first game wasn't the way it was in terms of literally running from point A to point B, avoiding BTs, occasionally having to fight a boss, setting up ladders to cross rivers and climb mountains and all this stuff, and eventually get vehicles. Then I think the gameplay could be more interesting. I mean, the gameplay in the beginning doesn't feel as intuitive as the Metal Gear Solid games were back in the day. So, I don't know. I don't know if Death Stranding 2 is actually needed, is what I'm trying to say. Like, I don't know if the public is demanding there needs to be a sequel, if that makes sense. I feel like if Kojima would have just gone off and did something completely different, I don't think anybody would complain. But nope, they decided to make Death Stranding 2, so I don't know if it's going to be a timed exclusive. Wasn't it a timed exclusive? Yeah, it was a timed exclusive on PlayStation for a while, I think, for like a year or two or something. Then it eventually came to the PC. But yeah, this game wasn't super hard to run, and I don't think they're going to change it that much, so it doesn't really look that different. Let's kind of skip to some of the C. So it's still kind of the same thing. You still fight BTs. So, I don't know. That's a long trailer. And then it says Kojima's making a new game. So, anyway. That was State of Play. But it is kind of a good preview into when or how games will be going forward. So, because most of these games are coming out. Now, that one obviously is not coming out this year. But most of those games at the first half are coming out this year. Yeah, in terms of hardware launches, I don't think we're getting anything in Q2 unless Intel launches Battle Mage in June, which I highly doubt they're going to do. In Q3, we're getting Zen 5 and X870E motherboards for those that don't already have a AM5 motherboard. And then, trying to think what else could come out in this time. Maybe RDNA 4, but I highly doubt it. Battle Mage, I expect to come out in Q3. I'd be very surprised if it misses and goes to Q4. And I would be surprised if it comes out any sooner than that. Q4, RTX 5090 will launch in Q4. And maybe 5080. Man, see, I hate how this automatically moves it down. Like, why is it moving it down? And then if RDNA 4 comes out, that's when it would come out. Sometime in Q4, I would assume. So this is kind of what I predict. And then Intel CPU line, I don't know when that would come out. I have no idea. Arrow Lake on desktop, I do not know when that would come out. But definitely sometime in the second half. Definitely in the second half. Games, Pal World, Tekken 8, Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth. Those are all the January games. Trying to think if there's any others. Unless you guys know of any others. Let me check. Just see what I'm tracking here. The Last of Us Part 2 came out on PlayStation 5. And then February, which it also counts, is Grand Blue, Fantasy Relink, and Persona 3 Reload. So the reason why I'm listing these is if I'm going to be streaming gameplay on the weekend, because sometimes I'll do live streams on the weekend, and I'll typically be streaming a video game, and if anyone wants to ask hardware-related questions or PC build advice or whatever, like, I can always answer those questions while I'm live. But if I'm going to be streaming a game in Q1, well, let's say for the next month, it's going to be one of these 5 games that are shown here. So these are kind of like my playlist, if you will, in terms of games that I'm playing right now. So Pal World, I have not played Pal World since that one live stream that I literally played Pal World for like 4 hours or 5 hours or however long that live stream was. Tekken 8, I did cover that on live stream. I might showcase that again. I've been spending most of my time playing Tekken 8 that is not related to doing content related to the channel or otherwise. You play Pal World with the bros? What? Yeah. Yeah, wait. What? There, you bought the first to play? What? Oh, the first Death Stranding. There'll be guns now. The gameplay loop is officially fixed. I'm more interested in Dogma and Metro. Yeah, I will be covering Dragon's Dogma. So I'm just talking about games for the immediate. And then for the next set of games will be Final Fantasy VII. I don't know why it cut off. I don't understand why it does that. It's like, I don't know what button combination I'm doing to cause it to do that. Anyway, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I will be covering that on the channel, on stream, because that is one of my most anticipated games of the year. Like I said last year, the only games going into this year that I was hyped for prior to the Dragon's Dogma 2 announcement was Final Fantasy VII and Tekken 8. And I guess maybe Dawn Trail. But that's coming later. So those were literally the only games. So all these other ones, like Infinite Wealth, Grand Blue Fantasy Relink was on the list, but it wasn't like, okay, I didn't have super high expectations for that game. And I didn't even know that Persona 3 Reload was going to come out. So, and Power World just kind of took the world by storm. So it's like, I might as well just like cover it to see what all the hype is about. But I honestly don't see myself playing a lot more of Power World because that game doesn't really appeal to me. I don't really care about survival games, nor am I a big fan of Pokemon. So, I mean, it's a good game. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's just like it doesn't appeal to me. But I recognize that it's a good game. And it's an early access game, so it's only going to get better. So Final Fantasy Rebirth, Dragons, Dogma 2, and Rise of the Ronin. These are like what I consider like stage 2. These are like phase 2. Phase 2 of Q1. Is like those games like Final Fantasy, Dragon's Dogma, Rise of the Ronin, Suicide Squad, not purchasing it myself. Yeah, I'm not going to play that. That doesn't appeal to me. So I think Skull and Bones also is coming out. I'm not going to be playing that. And that's pretty much it. That gets us through Q1. These are games that you can expect to see me playing at some point in the near future. You don't like Pal? I mean, I didn't say I don't like Pal World. I said Pal World's a good game. It just doesn't. Though the genre doesn't appeal to me. Like it's not the sort of genre that I enjoy. That doesn't mean that it's a bad game. It doesn't mean that I don't like it. It's just not. It's not my thing. I'd rather play Tekken 8 or Grand Blue Fantasy Relink over Pal World, if that makes sense. But like Pal World's good though. I still have yet to play Pal World in co-op with other people because I feel like that would probably make it a lot more fun. But you can play it as a fully single player experience. So what game should I play? Any of the ones on this list. So as of right now, like I said, the reason why I drew the list like this is because all of these games are available now. These games are coming out later. This is coming out February 29th. And it's PlayStation 5 exclusive. These... Oh, you know what? I forgot one. Horizon Forbidden West is coming to PC. PC version. Yeah, I forgot about that one. So, but I don't know if I'm going to get that because I already have that on PlayStation 5. So I might skip this one. But if there's enough interest in it, because the problem is, like we said earlier, all 3 of these games come out on the exact same day. And I can already tell that the first one is going to get the majority of the attention. Dragon's Dogma 2 is going to get all the hype. So this is going to be like a sleeper launch. It's just going to come out on PC, and those that really want to play it on PC are going to get it, I guess. So, but it's basically going to be, a benchmark title, if you will. Like, if I buy this game, I'll probably play it I'll play probably like 3 or 4 hours of it. And then all my other playtime in this game will literally be for benchmarking computer parts, GPUs and CPUs. That's basically what this game is going to live as a benchmark application for me. That's what's going to happen with it. That's the unfortunate reality. Yeah. This, PlayStation 5 exclusive. So I don't think a lot of people are going to get it unless they have PlayStation 5. So that leaves this one. That's going to be the big one. It's coming out multi-platform day one. Huge, huge title. Very hyped for this game. I think a lot of people are. It's definitely going to be on the list for Game of the Year. I don't know if it's going to win. That remains to be seen. There's not a whole lot of news about games that are coming out in the second half. Like, I don't know. Like, does anybody know, like, what's supposed to come out game-wise in Q3? I know I know all this stuff's coming out in this time, but I don't know anything about the games. And part of this channel does focus on games, like hence the name Game Tech Reviews. We look at games, we look at hardware. We mostly do hardware, but we use games to measure the hardware's capability. I mean, why talk about ray tracing if you don't play games. You know what I mean? I'll probably keep busy until Dragon's Dogma. Make that your life for a couple of weeks. Yeah, I tend to do that too. Like, when I think about the games that came out last year, there was one game in particular that I literally like devoted like 3 days to, and that was Lords of the Fallen. Lords of the Fallen was so good. This game is kind of like a hidden gem of the Souls genre. Like, if you thought Lies of P was good, man, this game, okay, the difference was Lies of P was quality, Lords of the Fallen was quantity. But Lords of the Fallen, man, Lords of the Fallen, the sheer amount of quantity, the amount of content in the game, the seamless co-op, the invasions. I did do some invasions, but you know, a lot of people would just leave. So, and kind of the community, the PvP community in Lords of the Fallen is kind of dead. It kind of died off, like probably after 2 months after release. But it's a game that I can see myself going back to if they do some kind of DLC update or something. But surprisingly good game. I sneezed there. Had to mute the microphone. But yeah, this game, I devoted like almost, not quite a week, but like a weekend and a half to this one game last year. Trying to think, was there any other game that I did the same thing? I don't know. Trying to think. Maybe, because I was planning to do that for Starfield, but Starfield was so boring. I just couldn't do it. It was just so boring. I'm trying to look back at the list. Forza, Assassin's Creed Mirage, Lords of the Fallen, Lies of P. Oh, I did play a lot of Lies of P, but Lies of P was not super long compared to Lords of the Fallen. So it's like, I think it only took me like 3 days to play through all of Lies of P, and then that was basically it. Starfield, I tried so hard to like Starfield at launch. I just couldn't get into it. Armored Core 6, Fires of Rubicon. So here's the thing, like, Armored Core 6, if you ask all the From Software fanboys and the fangirls, I guess, who whatever X% of From Software's player base has fangirls, but if you ask the From Software fan base, I should say, what was the game of the year of 2023, they would say, whoops, I don't know why that didn't type, but they would say it was Armored Core 6, Fires. Every time I type that symbol, it's like it does a prompt. It's weird. Armored Core 6, Fires of Rubicon, which I still have to finish this game. I am actually like really close to the end though. I think there's only like 2 bosses and I'm done with this game. This game, I thought this game would be the sort of game that would consume my attention for like a week. No, it just wasn't. Like, it just wasn't. I don't know. It just didn't resonate with me the way all the From Software people are like, man, this is the best game no matter what. No one can change my opinion. It's not Zelda. It's not Baldur's Gate. It's not any of these other games. Not even Lies of P. Not Lords of the Fallen, because that's just a clone. It's a cheap clone of Dark Souls. No. Armored Core 6, Fires of Rubicon is the best game ever made in 2023 because it's made by From Software, and they're the only ones who know how to make video games. Like, there's a lot of people who had that opinion, and I'm not making this up. There are large live stream YouTube personalities with massive followings, more than 1 million subscribers, who claim that Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon is the best game of 2023. Now, it's their personal best game of 2023, so they'll accept that Baldur's Gate 3, a lot of people think it's a really good game, best game of the year. But they personally consider this the best game. So, that game, we're not going to get... that reminds me of something, actually. So, sometime this year, Elden Ring... Man, okay, so every time I type this, I can't use that in Paint because it... Okay, I learned something. You can't type colon in Paint. It'll mess it up. Elden Ring, or at least in the Windows 11 one. Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erd Tree. This is the expansion. This is the much anticipated DLC for Elden Ring. Now, if this comes out this year, the same thing that happened when Cyberpunk released their big update, Liberty City, or whatever it was called, last year, no matter what Cyberpunk does, or no matter what any other game tries to do with an expansion, if Shadow of the Erd Tree drops anytime this year, it's automatically going to win best update category or best community support or whatever you want to call that one award that Cyberpunk won for Liberty City. Elden Ring's going to steal that award no matter what, because it's everybody's waiting for it. There's too many people. The From Software fanboy crowd is waiting for it. So this thing comes out, I'm waiting for... I'm not crazy stoked about it, but when it does come out, it does have priority over all these other games. So that means if it comes out on the same day as Dragon's Dogma 2, well, this supersedes Dragon Dogma 2. If this comes out the same day as Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, well, it supersedes that. It gets priority over all of these other games. 100% guaranteed. So if and when that comes out, it's supposed to come out. It's rumored to come out this year. I don't know when, but it's supposed to come out this year. It wouldn't make sense for it to come out next year, because From Software's next big game is coming out next year. So I'm a little bit surprised that we didn't get any sort of teaser trailer or anything concerning From Software in Sony's PlayStation State of Play, because I thought we were going to get to see a Shadow of the Erd Tree trailer, or maybe some kind of weird teaser of some upcoming game, because 2025 is the year. Let it be known, the next big From Software game, the successor to Elden Ring, whatever that game ends up being called, whatever that game ends up being, that is coming out next year. Because From Software operates on a strict schedule. They do not miss. They do not release early. They do not release late. They're always on schedule. They're very consistent, and they make very good quality games. So pretty much guaranteed, the next big From Software game is coming in 2025. Every 3 years is their game release cadence for big titles. Armored Core was not a big title. That was a big title. That was not a big title. So big title, Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3. Because remember, Dark Souls 3, 2016. Dark Souls, Sekiro, 2019. Elden Ring, 2022. So you plus 3. So 2022, Elden Ring. Add 3 years. Where are you? 2025. Hence why the next big game is coming in 2025. See, these timelines, I draw these timelines for a reason, guys, because you can easily guess with high confidence when the next big thing is coming out, just from looking at the time frames. You know why? I'll let you guys in on a little secret. Companies function on product development cycles. Product development cycles are attached to something called a roadmap. A roadmap. Every company that develops products has a internal roadmap. Now, the time frame for when products go to market, it can shift. It can either be pulled forward, it can be delayed, but it cannot be delayed so much that it can negatively impact their revenue, negatively impact, if it's a publicly traded company, for example, their shareholders' opinions, and public perception, and all these sort of things. So when you have a product roadmap, you can. So okay, let's put it this way: if you're someone from the outside, you don't work for the company, so you don't know what their actual roadmap is. All you have to do is look at the history of how they operate when they release their previous products. This can be applied to graphics cards, CPUs, video games, anything. Any company that develops products has a product roadmap. The roadmap determines when the product will come out to market. So what did I say? I used Elden Ring as an example. Elden Ring 2022. When was Sekiro? 2019. There's a 3-year gap between Sekiro and Elden Ring. When was Dark Souls 3? 2016. I don't even need to Google this stuff because I'm so confident that I'm correct when I guess at these years. You guys can fact check me and you'll be like, well, he's right. Oh, he's right. Dark Souls was 2016. Sekiro was 2019. Elden Ring was 2022. You know why I'm able to know that? Because all I need to know is the most recent game. If I memorize the most recent game, in this case Elden Ring, I know is 2022. In fact, it was the very end of February of 2022. That's my baseline. If I know that, I can subtract 3 years and I can guess when Sekiro came out. I want to say it was March of 2019. I have not researched any of this. You guys can check and see if I'm right or wrong. I'm going to go ahead and say Sekiro was March 2019. And then if I subtract 3 more years before that, that brings me to 2016. Well, what happened in 2016? We got Overwatch, we got the GTX 1080 and the 1070, and the Yamcha RX 480. That was 2016. So that would have been Dark Souls 3, and that probably would have been, I want to say April. I don't know if I'm right on that one because now we're starting to stretch way back. But 2016 April is when I would guess Dark Souls 3 because From Software tends to release their big games in the spring or the late winter. So now people are fact checking me. So Sekiro, I'm guessing that was Sekiro, March 22nd. So if you want to check Dark Souls 3, I'm going to guess it's like April 2016. I don't think it's March. To me, March 2016 does not sound right. And the reason why I'm going to say April is because 2016 was the year of VR. 2016 was when the Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive came to market in the first part of 2016. And then at the end of 2016, you had PlayStation VR and you had PlayStation 4 Pro in 2016. That shows you how old these products are. So these are operating on hardware roadmaps. Okay, so in Japan it was March 2016. But it was in April. So I got it right. Yep, Yamcha RX 462 August 2016. Yeah, I want to say RX 480 was like June 29th, 2016. And the only reason why I remember that, it was either June 29th or June 30th of 2016. Now I'm kind of curious like if I'm actually right on that. Because I remember walking into Micro Center and buying that thing, the reference card, like day one. on launch day for the RX 480. And that was the same month that the GTX 1070 launched. GTX 1070 I think was like June 10th or something. And then the GTX 1080 was sometime in May. It was like it was like toward the end of May. It was like mid to late May of 2016 was the GTX 1080. Man, Dark Souls 3 is like a month older than the GTX 1080. That means Dark Souls 3 is that old? What? Oh, you got it at Fry's? Oh, that means you got the same one. You got the reference from XFX, right? Because the XFX, the reason why I got the XFX one is because it had the nice backplate on the reference card. Man, now we're just gonna think of Yamcha. Every time I think of Yamcha, now it's just ingrained in my mind that he's a he's a GPU. Okay. But so basically, you guys get what I'm saying, right? So if Dark Souls 3 was 2016, you add 3 years and you get Sekiro. Sekiro was 2019, you add 3 years, you get Elden Ring. Guess what? That was like February, March 2022 plus 3 to that. That puts you in 2025. That means From Software's next big game is going to be next year. And you know what's also coming out next year? So here's the thing, guys. I just realized this. Isn't GTA 6? Isn't GTA 6 coming out next year? On console only, though. It's not coming to PC. Wait a minute. Oh, man. We are looking at the potential, like the biggest showdown in gaming history for Game of the Year. Like if From Software if it's going to be a From Software game going up against Rockstar's GTA 6, man, that is like literally that's the Clash of the Titans. That is Clash of the Titans right there. Like if it's like some kind of Elden Ring 2 or some completely new thing versus GTA 6, that is like going to be the most insane showdown. I don't even know who's going to win. Can you imagine? Cuz like if Elden Ring, think about it like this. If Baldur's Gate 3 went up against Elden Ring, I kind of think Elden Ring would have won. But maybe that's just me being biased in favor of From Software. That's a tough call. Like if Elden Ring and Baldur's Gate 3 came out in the exact same year, who would actually win? Adventures of Cookie and Cream 2 versus GTA 6. People are going to fanboy over GTA 6, even if it's a bad game. GTA 5 was a decent game, though, at launch. The thing is, here's the thing. Here's the thing, guys. Remember, GTA 6 is going to have a huge handicap. Because guess what? GTA 6 next year is console exclusive. So there's going to be no PC version of GTA 6. But meanwhile, From Software's next big game is going to be on PC. It's going to be multiplat, day one. So you're going to have multiplat From Software flagship versus kneecapped GTA 6 on console. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, okay, right there, I guess that kind of evens the odds because GTA 6 is, like in terms of audience appeal, GTA 6, I would say, definitely has the advantage of wider target demographic, I guess, because From Software's games are always kind of niche, yet over the years, they've kind of appealed to a wider audience. So GTA 6 will beat all. It is inevitable. Are you sure about that? I mean, we've seen big hyped games fall, like Starfield as a prime example. Cyberpunk as a prime example when it came out in 2020. So it kind of depends. Now, I'm not saying that GTA 6 is going to be like Cyberpunk when that game launched, because I feel like Rockstar is far more competent when it comes to making games. So I don't expect any kind of like Cyberpunk levels of trash to launch initially, especially since it's going to be console only, at least in 2026 or 2025. The 4070 went to an FX system you had and got HD 78. You mean 7870 or 7850? Rip any other game coming out next year. Yeah. Yeah, well, the only other thing, right? Like maybe Death Stranding 2. It's gonna be funny. Like, can you imagine? Can you imagine if the next? Oh no, I just thought of something. Horizon, Horizon Forbidden West. Horizon Forbidden West was 2022. If you plus 3 to that, the next Horizon game should be 2025. Although they might actually do like a 4-year cadence. I don't know. I have to go back and look. Can you imagine if Horizon comes out and then like 2 weeks after that, or like the next Horizon 3, whatever comes out, then like 2 weeks after that, the Elden Ring 2 or the From Software game, or maybe GTA 6 comes out and completely like eclipses Horizon, like 100% eclipses Horizon. That game never gets a proper chance to shine, man. Like that entire franchise. That franchise is pretty good. Like the Horizon games are actually legitimately good games. They always get overshadowed. They always get overshadowed. It's like, oh man, what is the one analogy I'm trying to think? It's like the curse. They have some kind of curse. It's like they always pick a time when some larger, more hyped game decides to also launch. So when Marcel's like rip any other game coming out, I was thinking Horizon. Watch Horizon try to come out with a game. Oh, that's gonna be so terrible. Because they make legitimately good games. Think about it, like Horizon, Zero Dawn, and Forbidden West. They run really well. The visuals are really good for a game that doesn't use RT in the traditional sense, and they always get overshadowed. They'll do a smaller game just not to break the tradition of being overshadowed. PC Master Race people have consoles connected to their TVs. I don't know. I don't understand what you mean by that. Like you mean they're gonna fuse, like basically like they're gonna use a capture card, like me. They're all gonna have like AverMedia and Elgato capture cards to play GTA, to combine GTA 6 into their PC. Yeah, I'm trying to think like what. Oh, Death Stranding 2, Kojima. Kojima's Death Stranding 2. Man, if Kojima is smart, if he's smart, depending on how far into the development of Death Stranding 2 they are, if he wants his game to actually be relevant and win awards, he needs to either launch it this year, or if not this year, then he has to wait all the way until like 2026 or something. Like, I don't know. Yeah, GTA 6 will sell consoles. Yeah, you're right. You're right. That will sell consoles. So, and that leads me to another thing. Because of GTA 6, thanks for mentioning that. Because I'm just going to put this down here or something. Because we're also expecting that this year. Sometime in either late Q3 or more realistically, sometime in Q4, there will be a PS5 Pro. Mark my words. There will be a PlayStation 5 Pro. And this will be perfect timing for the PS5 Pro. Because you know what? GTA 6, being a console exclusive, is coming out next year. So what better time for Sony to get the PS5 Pro out into the market right before the GTA 6 drop, because that way they can sell way more PS5 Pros and people aren't going to complain because PS5 Pro is basically going to perform like a 70, somewhere between these two GPUs. So kind of like 4070. So keep that in mind. For those that are wondering how powerful the PlayStation 5 Pro will be, I'm going to put this on the screen to kind of illustrate what sort of graphical power level the PS5 Pro will be capable of in terms of modern hardware. It'll be kind of like 4070, 7700 XT, 7800 XT. Oh, and guess what? Battle Mage will also be similar to a PS5 Pro. So PS5 Pro GTA 6 combo. Yeah, that will sell. That will definitely sell. A GTA 6 PS5 Pro bundle, that will sell like that's the sort of thing. Well, okay, I don't think it's going to get scalped or anything. Unless we run into some kind of catastrophic supply shortage issue like we did 2 years ago. I don't really think there'll be a problem, but yeah, that will sell. That will definitely sell. That'll be an insanely good bundle too. Because I plan to get a PS5 Pro. Just so you guys know. Like, I plan to upgrade to the Pro just to see... Because the thing is, you need the consoles to have better ray tracing performance if you expect ray tracing to become mainstream. So, Sony making a PlayStation 5 Pro, which will have improved RT, you'll be able to do, 1440p native for most games. And you won't need to rely on FSR or whatever baked in upscaler they decide to use for some of the games when they try to go to 4K. Because I feel like if you have we'll be conservative in the estimate. We'll say that if the performance is like a 7700 XT, you can handle 1440p native. So if you want to push 4K as your advertising marketing hype, then you can use FSR to go. FSR quality can get you to 4K without a lot of loss in image quality. So I feel like that would probably be ideal for them. Yeah, and that's basically what these cards are, because the 6800 XT is on par with the 4070. So, yeah, that could have been listed on here. And actually, you're right, because, well, see, I don't know if PS5 Pro is RDNA 2 or RDNA 3. If it's RDNA 2 based, then yeah, then it's going to be like a 6800 XT. But if it's RDNA 3 based, then I think it's going to be more like a 7800 XT. It's a 60 compute die, that much I know. RDNA 3.5, well, okay, well then it's going to be even, it's newer than that then. But yeah, that's coming out in Q4. So, yeah, in terms of like hardware releases, we're going to get a lot of interesting things in the last part of the year. We're going to get 5090, 5080, and this. I mean, I don't really know much about RDNA 4. It's not like I'm trying to, like, ignore that. I just don't know much about it. I just don't know what it's going to do. I do know that this is coming out, and I'm pretty confident that at least one of these, if not both of these, are coming out in terms of 50 series. So RDNA 3 with tweaks. Yeah. But, I mean, if you think about it, a console with this level of graphical performance is pretty good, all things considered. Like, that is a pretty decent console. I don't know. A lot of people are saying that it will. I don't know if it's actually coming out. That's why I put it here at the end of the year, because I don't really know. So if I'm not confident on saying when something's going to come out, I tend to just kind of stick it in at the end of the year. Kind of like how when you don't know if a retailer doesn't know when a video game is coming out, like Amazon is notorious for doing this. They'll literally just list a game's release date as the very last day of the year. So, but yeah, notice how, like, see, this is why I wanted to draw this out, because it kind of shows, like, the first part of the year is mostly like video games. The second half of the year is where all the hardware is. So if you're somebody who upgrades on a 2-year cadence, which means you upgrade every generation, which means you upgrade every 2 years, because 4090 was 2022, add 2 years, 2024, guess what? 5090 inbound, because 2022 was 4090, subtract 2 years, 2020. Oh, guess what? RTX 3090. That's when that launched. See? So that's why you don't need hardware leaks to guess when these things come out. I mean, I think I've proven this time and time again. Just like we did, just like how I showed you guys Sekiro, Elden Ring, Dark Souls, I can do the exact same thing with NVIDIA's lineup. Case in point, 2024, 5090, 2022, 4090, 2020, 3090, 2018, 2080 Ti. See what I mean? So, do the exact same thing. You don't need any hardware leaks. You just kind of look at what was the trend, and that's the pattern, and that's it. So, sometimes they do weird things, though, where they kind of move the flagships around. Case in point, 1080 Ti was 2017, while 1080 was 2016. So sometimes they do that. Well, actually, historically, NVIDIA has done that. They broke that trend with the 2080 Ti. And ever since ever since they went from GTX to RTX, they've always launched the flagship, the true flagship, with like all their other stuff as the first one. Well, not the first one, but like with at the front of the line. Not like, how they did 1080, then 1080 Ti like a whole year later, or almost a year later. And they did the same thing with the 980 and the 980 Ti. So the release date doesn't matter as much as what the hardware spec. Well, the thing is, no, it does matter, because if you don't, like, if you're actually planning, so no, I disagree with that, because the point I'm making is, like, if you're somebody who upgrades on a 2-year cadence, which means you upgrade every generation, you don't want to be buying this stuff that's launching now. That's the point I'm making. Unless you operate on a 3-year, 4-year, 5-year cadence upgrade cycle, then maybe Super Series makes sense. Of course, budget matters too, right? Like, not everybody's just going to go out and buy a 5090 on launch day. So, but understanding when a new generation launches going forward, that kind of sets the baseline for when you would plan your upgrade. Well, then yeah, so, and that's fine. That means you don't upgrade on a 2-year cycle. 2-year cycle means every generation, in my mind. So if we talk about 3-year generation, see, so a 3-year generation would be like somebody going from let's think about it. So if someone had a 2080, let's say someone had a 2080 and they bought it in 2019. That would have been the year the super cards came out. But they didn't buy a super. They bought like a 2080 on clearance or whatever. But they operate on a 3-year cycle. So that means, well, okay, this is a terrible example, because if they bought in 2019, well, actually, no, it wouldn't be. No, it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be. It proves my point. Because if somebody bought a 2080 in 2019, add 3 years, that's 2022. Well, guess what? 2022 was the year of the 3090 Ti. In the beginning of the year, you had 3090 Ti in Q1 of 2022. So that means if someone was looking to upgrade from a 2080, the new product, if they were looking in this time of that year, The option would be 3090 Ti. Now, obviously, it's way too expensive, so they probably would not have done it. So they would have waited. And guess what would happen at the end of the year? 4080 and 4090 were at the end of the year. So they had the option to go to those. Now, could they actually go to those? Probably not, because they're so expensive. Maybe the 4080, but that's a hard pill to swallow at $1,200 starting price. So, and this is hence the reason why everyone complained about the 40 series pricing. Because you had people who bought a 2080 in 2018 or 2019, or even 2020 before 30 series came out, and they skipped the 30 series because they couldn't get one because they were scalped and they were overpriced. We all know how that played out. But if they operate on a 3 to 4 year cycle, they could go someone on a 2080 today or a 2080 Super, because that was 2019. They are the people that would consider the Super 40 series. They are the intended audience, or anyone who's either them or on older hardware, because they operate on that 3, 4, 5 year upgrade cycle, which is more typical of the average consumer looking to upgrade hardware. So who's buying Super 40 series? People on 2080 or 2080 Ti. Anybody who's on Turing or older. People who are on Ampere should not be, well, I don't know. There's an argument to be made there. And I'm probably going to do a video series talking about whether or not people on Ampere should upgrade to the 40 Super series. Because there is an argument to be made. It's a harder argument to justify, but I feel like I can make that argument and it could sound very logical. So, but it's a much easier thing to say. Anybody who's on a 2080 or 1080, yeah, the 4080 Super, that is more like it's a relevant upgrade if they don't want to wait for the 50 series. Otherwise, they could wait. It depends on a lot of other factors. I went from Vega to RDNA 2. Yeah, see, exactly. So so Vega was 2017, RDNA 2 was 2020. So again, by that example, that's like a 3 to 4 year upgrade cycle, depending on when you bought Vega, depending on when you actually upgraded to RDNA 2. That's going to be at minimum like 3 to 3.5 years of waiting. See? So again, you still fall into the exact same demographic that I just described in terms of people who are actually looking at certain hardware at the time that hardware is new. Remember that the 3090 was on Samsung. What does this have to do with what we're talking about? Wait, I'll put this out there and say the 5090 will launch December and cost $1,800 with 35% performance uplift compared to 4090. I will say that is actually a good expectation to have, because that could come true. That is actually that is a relevant prediction. I don't consider that unrealistic expectations. I consider that a realistic expectation. Remember that 3090 was on the Samsung, what does that have to do with? Oh, I guess because of the performance, the comment about that performance. Yeah, but that has nothing to do with the 2080 or anyone who's looking at upgrading to 40 series. So is the 4090 Ti going to be released? I don't see it on your timeline. No, it's not. Not to the consumer market. We talked about that way at the beginning of the stream. We discussed 4090 Ti. The best we're getting this generation is literally what we talked about here. And that launched yesterday. The 4080 Ti. Also known as the 4080 Super. The 4080 Super is the 4080 Ti. Just so you know. Why would nvidia charge $1,800 for a 50? Well, I mean, so they could do 2,000. They could do 2,000. They could do $1,999 MSRP. They did that with a 3090 Ti. If the 4070 Super matches the 3090, can we expect 5070 to match 4090? Uh, that's a good question. I don't know. It depends on how the flagship performance uplift is, because typically the flagship uplift can give you an idea of how much the lower tiers will be, but not always. Not always, because if you look at the 4060 Ti versus the 3060 Ti, there's not a huge improvement there, so I don't know. Met saying 5070 should be like 4080. Yeah, that to me sounds more realistic. Yeah, that sound maybe. Maybe. We'll see. I don't know. Possibly. I don't consider the 3090 a card that stays relevant very long though, because 3090, as far as I'm concerned, 3090, and I feel like the YouTube channels that showcase like repairing graphics cards, for example, like North Fix and those guys, they probably back me up on this claim, but I don't see the 3090 being a long-term graphics card because it doesn't age well. Let's put it that way. It has the problem with sagging because it's too heavy, and the average consumer doesn't remember to put a support brace under it or a GPU bracket or whatever. Some do, but not everybody does. So it just kind of hangs and it sags, and eventually that'll damage one of the RAM chips that's near the PCIe slot. So then you'll start having artifacting. Then you have to RMA it, but now they're so old, so they're out of support. So people are gonna have to go to like North Fix to get them fixed. It's just a real pain. As an owner of a 3090, it will be like a real pain to maintain those cards. And the other thing too is the VRAM on the back of the 3090 literally cooks itself to death the more you use the card. So that's not a graphics card that's going to live a long lifespan like the 1080 Ti. So that's the reason why I don't ever really see the 3090 as being a long-live Ampere sort of graphics card. The graphics card that I really feel is going to take that title is going to be the RTX 3080. The 3080, not the 3080 Ti, not the 3090, not the 3090 Ti, none of those things. 3090 Ti came out way too late in the lifespan. There was not that many of it produced. It's very rare. It's like a rare unicorn. The 3090 has VRAM that cooks itself. It has sag problems, etc. It's not going to live very long. It was born with bad genetics. I don't know what else to say. The Samsung 8 nanometer node, that was already like a power consumption fiasco, nuclear power plant sort of thing, tripping PSU OCP for people who were overclocking it with lousy PSUs. We all know about the whole Amazon's MMO New World disaster, killing 3090s because some companies chose to put lower quality. You know what I'm saying? You get what I'm saying? 3090 has arguably more controversy surrounding it than the 4090 with its dangerous fire hazard power connector. You know what I mean? So 3090 is not a very good card to have. I'm sorry if you're watching this and you have a 3090. Just know that it's not going to be anything like a 1080 Ti in terms of how legendary that card was. So memory artifacting, sag, cheap components on some models for capacitors on the back. No. High power consumption, high heat, dumping waste heat in the case, 350 watts constantly. Typical EVGA for the Win editions were like 450 watts. So, not a very good graphics card. It's definitely better for people who do AI. I would recommend 3090 for AI. I would not recommend it for gaming in 2024. If you're looking at one used. So is the 49... Okay, we talked about that. Why would NVIDIA chip? No, we have talked about that. Where's the chat? For sure, the 3090 is no. Yeah, the power consumption. There's way too many things. Ampere will age like fine milk. So that's the reason why the 3080, particularly the 3080 10 gig, because that's the vast majority of 3080s, not the 12 gig. I know there's a 12 gig. I know that there was like differences in clock speeds and it was so weird, and NVIDIA never changed the name and it was just bizarre. But like 3080 10 gig is the one that's going to be the saving grace of the Ampere line, because it was the card that everybody sought after and was very hard to obtain for most of its lifespan. It was the most balanced GPU. It was a $700 MSRP, which was by today's standards, it's actually pretty reasonable, all things considered. And yeah, it's still pretty good today. So, but that's pretty much the extent of Ampere. So, if you put a 3090 Ti on TSMC 7, it would have been 35% faster. So you're saying then the 5090 is going to be 35% faster than the 4090? I think, is that comment in response to someone who was asking about 5090 earlier, about like the performance uplift? I forgot. What was the most botched GPU ever? Intel A770 is the most botched. Yeah, I would agree with that. Probably. Yeah. It was bizarre because I'm getting a notification that Persona 3 Reload is ready to play. Oh, there's an update that came out. It's patching the game. Okay, well, I have Persona 3 Reload ready to go, so I'll probably stream that at some point in the near future. R9 290 X2 or Fury X2. That's not a botched launch because that was a very niche product that the most recent botched GPU is a 3090 Ti because it was so late. See, I don't know about that. No, I wouldn't agree. I don't agree because you have to think back to when the 3090 Ti launched, what it was like. You have to think back to what it was like back in March of 2022. You have to, first of all, you have to realize that when the 3090 Ti launched, Ethereum was still proof of work. Crypto was still profitable. GPUs were still hard to get. So it was still very hard to get a 3080. It was not as hard as it was the previous year, but it was still hard when the 3090 Ti came out. That's the reason why 3090 Ti launched for $2,000 for the Founders Edition, and nobody talked about it because you couldn't get one. It was constantly gone, scalped, whatever you want to call it. And that was basically it until the latter half of the summer, which was when Ethereum went, you guessed it, proof of stake, and crypto immediately overnight died off. That is what shifted everything. Because the thing is, people don't realize that if Ethereum never went proof of stake, no one would have been able to get a 4090 or a 4080 at MSRP or even close MSRP from day one. From day one, if Ethereum never shifted over to proof of stake, the crypto wave would have continued on into 2023. So basically the 3090 Ti would have literally existed as a paper launch. It would have never materialized because it would have constantly been bought up by crypto people and then sold in, and you guys remember AI took off last year. So if crypto maintained until sometime into 2023, you would have never been able to get 4090. You would have never been able to get any of the 40 series at all because all the lower end models, which all launched throughout last year, starting with 4070 Ti in January last year, followed by 4070, then 4060 Ti, or 4060 Ti. You had all those boys launching in throughout 2023. If crypto never went away, all those cards gone like that the whole year. Because guess what? AI takes off too. AI doesn't wait for anybody. AI doesn't wait for you. AI doesn't wait for me. It's coming for all the GPUs. It's going to steal them, take them all up, especially the 4090. And that's exactly what we're seeing. That's why the 4090 is so overpriced right now. So if crypto comes back later on this year, like it's rumored to sort of potentially happen with Solana and some other coins, 40 super 70 whatever, 4070 super, and all the 4060 Ti's and 46 that no one cares about, it'll all sell. It'll all sell. It's all gonna go. Everything must go. All of AMD's 6000 series that they're still around, all those 6750 XTs that they still can't get rid of, that Newegg still has. Crypto comes back, bam, all that stuff is gonna move. I kid you not. I kid you not. I can't help but think that Newegg, Best Buy, and to a lesser extent Micro Center, and Amazon, I guess, they are really hoping that crypto comes back, because the amount of revenue and profit margin that they can make by implementing Newegg Shuffle and Best Buy Total Care subscription, like selling these things as services, that like they would be more than happy to implement those tactics again if crypto, because crypto created like a whole nother sub economy, sub market for these intermediate players in all of this. So and that is the cold hard truth. So that could very well happen this year. So all these super cards, like if that happens, it's almost like these cards, they don't exist. They're basically paper launches, and they'll vanish if crypto comes back. And then everyone will just be sitting around waiting for 50 series, hoping that crypto dies before the mainstream 50 series shows up next year. So we could be looking at that, because right now, if you guys think about it, there's a massive gap between like 40 series super all the way to the 5090. The road to the 5090 is a long road, and who knows what could happen between now and the end of the year in terms of crypto and AI. And and guys, you got to remember, like, okay, if crypto doesn't come out and like gobble up these cards, that's fine, whatever. You can bet that AI is waiting. AI is like an eyeball. If this is an eyeball looking, here's like the eyelashes. Somebody's eyeball is looking. It's waiting. It's waiting to get the 5090. It's literally waiting. The eyeball is waiting. The eyeball is waiting. It's like looking. It's like it has binoculars. It's just waiting. It's waiting. It's camping. It's camping for that 5090, for the AI startups, the AI people that they couldn't buy. They can't afford MI300. They can't afford the Grace Hopper. The Eye of Sauron. Exactly. It's the AI is the all-seeing eye, a lidless eye that can see the market waiting for the GPUs. So if crypto doesn't come back, because crypto really wouldn't threaten 5090. It could. I mean, but I don't really think it's a long-term threat to 5090. I really, for gamers that want 5090 and 5080, AI is the true enemy. AI startups are the true enemy. They're the bane of the gamers who want the highest tier products, highest tier GPUs. AI is the bane of their existence. Hopefully 59 uses a different power. No, it's probably going to use the revised one, but it's still going to be using that 12 plus 4, based off of what I've been hearing. And AMD is also considering going to that connector. Not the current one, but like the revision. So, for at least for their higher wattage parts, I think AMD's approach is probably going to be smarter than NVIDIA. NVIDIA enforces like that power connector on all the lower end stuff, which doesn't, like the 4070. That doesn't make any sense. But anyway, we talked about that. I'm not going to repeat that part of this. I think this is a good stopping point. We've been talking for over 3 hours about all this like GPU and Dragon Ball Z references, and now the Eye of Sauron. AMD may make the move of putting multiple connectors regardless. They could, but I don't think they really need to do it unless they require 3 8-pins. Yeah, I can join for a little bit. Hold on. So NVIDIA comes to our aid. Then NVIDIA comes to our aid, releasing 5090 8GB, installing the. Well, see, the thing is, NVIDIA could. Well, I'm not saying NVIDIA can't do that, but NVIDIA would not do that because the damage to their reputation would be so severe. NVIDIA already caught enough flack for the whole like 12 gigabytes for $800 thing with this 4070 Ti, and also trying to name it the 4080 12 gig. You know what I mean? Like, they're probably not going to do that because it's the potential brand damage to their brand is too great. Like, that matters more to them than saving gamers from AI. That sounds so bad to say it that way, but that's actually the reality. $1,800 GPU with 8 gigs of VRAM. Well, you know what they could do? And I don't understand why NVIDIA hasn't done this already. You know, NVIDIA could easily solve this problem if they make like if they did say a 12 gigabyte 50 like a 12 gigabyte 5070, and then like gamer edition, and then a 24 gigabyte 5070 AI edition, and charge like $200 to $300 more for the AI edition. And I kid you not, the AI people would gobble that up. They would pay the $200 to $300, like a $250 upcharge, just for that extra VRAM, because that makes or breaks their LLM. Like, that determines whether or not it can actually run. Yeah, machine learning, ML edition. Yeah, I like that. The ML edition. Yeah. There'll be like a 5070, 12 gig, and then 5070 ML. 5070 ML would have like double the VRAM. It would use the clamshell. It would be like 24 gigs of VRAM. You know, that makes a lot of sense. Now, the reality is they already do this. That's called the Pro cards. That's the NVIDIA, that what used to be called the Quadro cards. But now they just call them the NVIDIA, you know, A40, A4000, A6000. Those cards, yeah, they kind of already do it, and those are the ones with the professional drivers, so whatever. But yeah, it'd be nice if they did that for their regular stuff. I mean, technically, the way I look at it is they already kind of have this with the 4060 Ti 16 gigabyte edition. And likewise, AMD has the same thing now with the 7600 XT, but that is so poorly named. That's such a stupid name. It's the same exact chip as the 7600, but it has double the VRAM. So that's basically the same thing as a 4060 Ti 16 gigabyte. It just has higher clocks on the AMD, on the newer AMD card. All right, guys. Well, that's gonna be it. That was an interesting stream. I feel like the discussion was way more interesting than I thought it would be. But we'll see. So we got some interesting hardware launches coming out in the second half of the year. But the first half of the year is probably mostly going to be focused on video games. XT just used overclocks or unlocked though. Yeah, but you could still overclock the other one. All right, guys, that's going to be it for the stream. Once again, thanks for tuning in. I think it was really fun interacting with the chat. And if you're new to the channel, we are live like this every Thursday evenings. And if you have any questions, if you're new to the community, you can join the Discord. There's a lot of helpful individuals, a lot of hardware enthusiasts in the community on this channel that follow this channel. And we would be happy to have anybody who shares similar interests join. So if not subscribed, subscribe to the channel. It helps me out. And with that being said, everyone have a good night, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks.